If you want to learn how to make Minecraft animations like these, then you've come to the right place. Hello, I'm Woodplank and I've been making Minecraft animations and teaching how to make Minecraft animations using Blender for many years. And in this tutorial series, I will be teaching you how to use Blender 5.0, which is completely free, and I will show you how to get started with making Minecraft animations. If you don't already know, Blender is a powerful, free and open source 3D software which can do almost everything, including 3D animations, which is what we will learn throughout the series. Additionally, we will touch on the subjects of setting up the scene, lighting, compositing, rendering, and video editing. Don't worry if you've never done any of these things before, because I will hold your hand throughout the series and explain everything step by step. By the end of this video, you will learn everything you need to know about creating beautiful cinematic 3D Minecraft animations, and you will be able to make this cool, short animation. 2 years ago, I released the Blender 4.0 beginner tutorial series, which a lot of people loved and learned a lot from. But since Blender 5.0 came out, there have been a few updates, which is why I decided to remake the tutorial. But instead of 5 parts, I will keep everything inside this one giant video. But don't worry if this video is too long, because I will show you the best ways to use YouTube for amazing learning experience. So before jumping in the tutorial, I will take a few moments to explain cool tips and life hacks. But if you want to jump straight into the tutorial, then feel free to skip to this part. So, this tutorial will have 5 segments. In the first segment, we will learn the basics of Blender, navigation, interacting with objects, and more. In segment 2, we will learn how to export and import the worlds, set up our scene, and organize our assets. In segment 3, we will jump into lighting and compositing to give our scene a cinematic look. In segment 4, we will learn animation and animate our Minecraft character and our camera. And finally, we will learn how to edit the video, add some sound effects, and export it properly. All segments will be written down and organized in the description of the video, so you can easily access them. I will have the topics organized into chapters and timestamps, so you can easily access them and relook at the subject you want to continue from. Also, if you go to the description of the video and click on More, you can scroll down and click on Show Transcript. This will transcribe the tutorial and show you everything that was said throughout the video. So if you need to find a specific keyword, you can click on Ctrl F and search for that word. Additionally, you can use this Ask feature to ask Google Gemini AI for anything you are looking for that is relevant to the video. You can write down your question manually or use the pre-made templates that is customized for the video and click on them to prompt the question. Also, if English isn't your preferred language, then you can enable captions. For that, go to the settings, click on subtitles, then click on auto translate and choose your preferred language. Now you will have your preferred subtitles. If you want to speedrun some parts, then you can change the speed of the video by going to the playback speed settings and choosing your desired pace. If you want to check something frame by frame, then you can use the comma and dot keys on your keyboard, or less than and more than keys on your keyboard. They're basically the same. It's very useful when you're analyzing references or watching animations on YouTube and breaking them down. Also, if you have YouTube Premium, you can click on these dots and download the video. So next time you open YouTube, you can go to your downloads library and watch this video without the internet if that's something you prefer. If you have any feedback, questions or issues, please leave a comment or join my Discord using the link in the description and ask your question in the #help text channel. After you finish the tutorial, you might have some questions about how to do certain things, so I recommend going through my channel, clicking on the videos tab and using Ctrl F to find your keywords, because there is a high chance that I already have a video made about what you're looking for. But if there are no videos made about a certain topic you're looking for, then feel free to suggest some of the video ideas in the comments. I should also mention that there is a lot of information to take from this video, especially if you're just starting out. So don't worry about mastering everything in one day, and do this across a few days. For example, if I start learning a new topic, I find that learning for 30 minutes a day is enough, so I don't feel overwhelmed and I can enjoy the process. So find your pace, learn as long as you want, and keep in mind that you don't have to rush it. And learning this can take a few days or even weeks, or for some people it can take months, which is totally fine. So take your time and enjoy the process. And lastly, if you want to go beyond the beginner level and dive deeper into creating longer cinematic Minecraft animations, learn more about animation tools and principles, graph editor and the NLA editor, get familiar with how to save time and use the animation library, plan your animated films properly and have multiple characters and multiple camera shots, and master the full Minecraft animation workflow from start to finish, then be sure to check out my Blender 3D Minecraft animation course, Ultimate A to Z Guide on Udemy. It's a 12-hour step-by-step structured course which is designed to take you from a complete beginner to someone who can create long cinematic Minecraft animations in just a few days using Blender. The course is highly rated and has over 100 students as of recording this video. It has captions in over 17 languages, so you can enable your preferred subtitles. Lastly, once you get the course, you will get lifetime access, free updates, and if you get stuck on anything, I will respond to you as fast as possible possible to make sure you keep making progress. So if you're interested, then check out the first link in the description. Now, if you want to follow along here, get ready because we are about to begin. So first thing we need to do is obviously download Blender. Go to the Blender website, which is going to look like this as of recording this video. But if you're watching this from the future, maybe it's going to look different. Click on download Blender 5.0. And if you're using Windows, click on the download or the installer. And if you're using Mac or Linux, click here. You can also download Blender from Steam, but I always download Blender from here. So I'm going to click this button. Choose your desired folder. I'm going to download Blender right here in the MC structure folders. I'm going to tell you what that is in a bit. So click on save. And then wait for the download to finish. And while Blender is downloading, I'm going to tell you a quick info about donating to Blender. So if you start making money with Blender, then it's purely optional. You don't have to do it, but you can definitely donate to Blender. For example, I started donating monthly to Blender and I became a silver member. So you can absolutely do that, choose different amounts. But again, this is optional and you don't have to do it. But whatever you donate, whether it's one time or monthly, it's going to get back to Blender and it's going to help Blender develop and become even better in the future. Now, the installation of Blender should be pretty easy. Make sure to save this in your desired drive, click on next, and then click on install, and it should install pretty quickly. And one more thing I highly recommend you do is while Blender is installing or downloading, please go to the description and download this folder called MC Structured Folders. It's going to be a zipped file. And once you download this, you can right click and then click on Extract All and unzip the file in your desired folder. Now, let me show you what this file does. So once you unzip this, you're going to get this, which is going to be the organized folders. Now, some of the folders are going to be empty because I'm going to show you how to download and organize them. But while you're making Minecraft animations, it's very, very important to stay organized because you're going to get lost and you're going to get very confused if you're not organized. So when we're going to download add-ons like the MC Prep one, for example, we're going to drag them here. You can also download animation library from my Patreon, the free one, which you can drag and drop here, but it's purely optional. If you have some assets, for example, we have rigs and maps or any other assets, we can drag and drop them here. We can also drag the Cycles Minecraft Boxscape Studios assets here if you're familiar with that. We can also drag our final video here. We're going to output our final video with the sound effects here. Also, if you click on this, I provided you with some free HDRI Skies, beautiful HDRI Skies, which you can use in your animations and which we're going to go through in the lighting and compositing segment in this video. You also have the project files where I recommend you keep the Blender or the .blend files. And finally, we have video editing where I provide you with a few whoosh and some sound effects which you can use in the final animation. So for now, only HDRI and video editing folders are full, and the rest of the folders, you can fill them yourself, and I'm going to show you how to do that throughout this video. So please go in the description and download the MC structure folder if you want to stay organized. If not, then you can follow along at your own pace. That's completely fine as well. Now, Blender has finished installing, so feel free to launch the program and follow along. Alright, once you open Blender, you're going to be greeted with a splash screen. Right now it looks like this, but in the future it might look different and have a different cover. Right now I'm using Blender 5.01. So if you're new to Blender, I recommend keeping most of these settings by default and click anywhere on the screen to make the splash screen disappear. But if you already use Blender, like I did for example Blender 4.5, then you can click on Import Blender 4.5 Preferences, so all of your previous preferences will be saved. But since this is a beginner tutorial, I'm going to show you what these settings do. So if you want to change the language, click here and you have a bunch of settings to choose from. We have themes here. Two main themes are Blender Dark and Blender Light, so you can keep this at default. Or if you hate yourself and you want to damage your eyes, then you can choose the Blender Light mode version. I'm just kidding, it kind of looks cool, so some people actually prefer light mode. So if you want to prefer this, you can keep this and then continue from there. But I'm going to change it back to Blender Dark. You can change the key map to Blender, to industry compatible, or to old Blender versions. So if you're used to Blender older versions, for example, when I started in 2017, Blender 2.7 was a bit different for Blender and they had different shortcuts, so you can choose this. Or if you're used to the industry standard softwares like Maya, for example, and you want to keep the shortcuts from there, you can choose the industry compatible, but I'm going to stick to Blender. And once you're ready, click on Save Preferences, and then you can click anywhere to make the splash screen disappear. And that's it. Welcome to the amazing world of Blender. If it's your first time opening, don't worry, it might feel a little intimidating, but feel free to follow along this video and make sure to listen to everything I say. If you already know the basics of Blender, navigation, creating, deleting objects, then feel free to skip to this part of the video. So firstly, I want to tell you that this is the 3D viewport, right? We're going to spend most of our time here, like 95% of the time. And I have a bunch of different windows here, and don't worry about them. I'm quickly going to glance over what these are. So we have an outliner, which you can think of it as like your folders, which you can organize some stuff here. And we're going to go through that too. On this side, we have a bunch of properties like render, output, and all the other properties. You don't have to learn everything right now. We're going to go through them step by step and learn the necessary stuff from here. Right here, we have a timeline. We have a play button. We have the timeline, which you can drag and then play the animation later as when we start animating. And on top, we have a bunch of workspaces. So Blender has many workspaces and they are organized for different purposes. So we have 3D viewport here, timeline here, properties, outliner here. But if I, for example, want to model, I can go to the modeling, and it's going to customize and rearrange the windows for the best modeling experience. Similarly, if I, for example, want to sculpt, I can go here. I can also go to shading, animation, it's going to rearrange the windows and so on. But you don't have to concern yourself with these. You can just click on layout and then customize the layout as much as you want. So if I click this window, for example, I can drag this and then rearrange this however you want. I can also click here, click on this button, and then switch this, for example, to UV editor, timeline, graph editor. You don't have to follow along right now, but I'm just showing you that you can do a lot of stuff. You can switch this to the compositor and so on. But right now I'm going to go back to the default. So I'm going to click on the 3D viewport here and then click on the outliners here. And I have my windows rearranged by default. So my point is that Blender is pretty flexible and we can rearrange the windows later on as we go on into the animation episode. Right now, I don't want to overwhelm you with all this. Now let's learn some navigation. Now, let's start with the basics of Blender. First thing you're going to learn is navigation, because after you learn navigation, everything gets easier as you go on. Now, I'm quickly going to enable the screencast keys add-on and I'm going to come back. So every button I'm pressing is going to appear in the bottom left screen so you can see this and then you can follow along better. So there you go. Now, every button I'm going to press is going to appear here. So first thing we're going to do is how to zoom in and out, and we're going to use our mouse scroll wheel for that. So if you move your scroll wheel up, you're going to zoom in, and if you move it down, you're going to zoom out. If you don't have a mouse and you use a trackpad on a laptop, first of all, I highly recommend you get the mouse. But if you don't want to do it, then if you come up here and then click on this button, click on this plus button, hold it, and then move it forward or move it backwards. So you can zoom in and out like this. Now, the next thing we need is how to orbit or rotate around an object. For that, we can click and hold on our scroll wheel or the middle mouse, and then move our mouse either left or right, and we will be able to rotate around an object. So again, you can zoom in and out, click and hold, and then rotate. Or alternatively, you can use these circles. So go up to these gizmos, click and hold, and then rotate either left or right. And that's going to do the same thing. And last thing we're going to do is how to pan or how to go side to side. For that, you can click and hold on shift, then click and hold on the middle mouse, and then go either on the left side or on the right side, or go up and down like this. And alternatively, you can use this hand button. So click and hold, and then it's going to do the same thing. So again, zoom in and out, rotate, and then pan. Go side by side. So if you're new to Blender, I recommend you pause this video and practice with basic navigation, scrolling in, going side by side, rotating, and so on. And after the navigation, the most important thing is to know how to select the objects. So right now we have different objects. So when you open Blender, you have a default cube, you have a camera, and you have a point light. So let's say I want to select my camera. It's pretty easy. I'm going to left click on my mouse and select the camera. But if you only have the right click enabled, you can change it from the preferences later. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. And again, I can do the same thing for the cube, left click, and then left click on the point light. And then whenever I left click the object that's highlighted in orange. I can also select multiple objects at the same time. So if I select the cube, then I can shift and then left click on the point light, shift and left click on the camera, and all of the objects are going to be selected. And one thing you should keep in mind is the object which you selected the last is going to be an active object and is going to be highlighted in yellow, and objects which you selected previously are going to be highlighted in orange. This is pretty important to keep in mind once you start animating and parenting stuff to the characters. So yeah, that's what you should keep in mind. Also, if you want to deselect everything, you can press on Alt A or type A twice pretty fast. And that's going to deselect everything. And if you want to select everything together, again, you can press on A, and that's pretty much it. One cool thing you can also do is box select objects. So if I zoom out like this and then click on B and then drag, I can box select everything that I have in my view and the scene. And that's a great way to select objects as well. Now let me tell you how to quickly delete objects. That's pretty easy. So if I select the cube, everybody deletes the default cube in Blender. So I'm going to press on X and then delete. Or you can simply select the cube and then click on the delete key. And let's say I regretted deleting my default cube and I feel bad for it, then I can press on Ctrl Z to move it back. And then Ctrl Z is basically a universal undo button. But if you want to redo your action, then you can click on Ctrl Shift Z, and that's going to redo your action. I'm going to Ctrl Z and bring back the cube, and let's continue. Now, when you open Blender, this is the default 3D view you're going to be greeted, but you can actually check your objects or your characters from one side, the other side, top or bottom. To do this properly, you can use the numpad on your keyboard. And for that, we're going to use the buttons 1, 7, and 3. So if I click on 1, I'm going to go to front view. If I click on numpad 3, I'm going to go to the side view. And if I click on 7, I'm going to go to the top view. And if I want to go to the opposite directions, for example, if I want to go to the back view instead of the front, I'm going to click on Control numpad 1, similarly Control 3, and then Control numpad 7 is going to be bottom view, and so on. And one more shortcut you can do is click on numpad 5, and it's going to jump you into the orthographic view like this, but I barely use it. Also, you can jump through the orthographic view from here. Click this, and if you hover over this, it's going to tell you can use numpad 5 as a shortcut. But I mostly use numpad 1, 3, and 7 for the orthographic views. And if you want to exit these views, you can simply click on middle mouse, move it anywhere, and then you're going to be able to exit this view. And one more important thing I should show you is how to jump inside the camera. For that, you can click on numpad 0. And if I click on numpad 0, I'm going to be viewing my scene from the camera's perspective. Or alternatively, you can press on this button to go in and then go out similarly. And if you want to go out of the camera view, you can also click on the scroll wheel anywhere, click on the scroll wheel, hold it, and then you're going to be able to cancel the camera view like this. Now, I know this might be a bunch of info if you're new, so make sure to pause this video and practice with everything you just learned and then follow along once you're ready. And one more very important navigation tool I want to show you is how to fly in your scene like you would basically fly or walk in a video game. So if I click on Shift and then tilde, which is this button above your tab key, then you can see I have this crosshair and I'm going to be able to move my mouse either left or right. And now if I click on WASD, like I would in an actual video game, I would be able to move forward, backwards, side by side. And if I click on Q and E, I'm going to be able to move down and up. So once again, click on Shift tilde and then practice with WASD. Now if I click on Shift and then W, I'm going to be able to walk faster like this. And if I click on Shift and then S, I'm going to be able to walk backwards faster. But one thing I often use is click on W and then use my scroll wheel to scroll up. And now I'm going to be able to move a lot faster like this. And if I scroll down, I'm going to be able to move slower. And this is something that I also use inside camera. So if I click on numpad 0, enter the camera view, and then click on Shift tilde, then I'm going to be able to enter the fly view. But for now, I want to cancel the movement and leave the camera where it is. So if I want to cancel the movement, I'm simply going to right click, and now it's going to cancel the movement. Now I'm going to click on middle mouse to exit the camera. Now Shift tilde is the default shortcut for Blender, but I want to change it to Shift F, and I'm going to show you how to do that later. So whenever I click on Shift F, I want to access this. And it's actually pretty easy to click on Shift F because I have my fingers right closer to Shift and then F while I'm animating. So yeah, I'm going to show you how to do that as well. But before we jump into changing preferences and doing all the fancy stuff, I'm going to show you how to move objects because that's very important if you want to learn animation. So to show you the basics of moving, rotating, and scaling your objects, I'm going to select the cube and then make sure we see the side. If you don't see the side, press on T and then it's going to reappear, or click on this tiny arrow and it's going to appear. Now, this is set by default, which is the select box. Now, you might be overwhelmed to see all of these options right here, but don't worry about the rest. All we need to do is learn how to move, rotate, and scale. So we need these three. First, I'm going to click on this move, and you can see I have different gizmos appear right here in my scene. Now, before we move the objects, I'm going to tell you Blender has three main axes. X is the red one, Y is the green one, and then Z is the up and down one. So if I click this, for example, click these options and enable Z, this is Z right here. But I don't enable it, and most people don't enable it because it's pretty distracting and you don't have to do it. But I'm just showing you that Z axis goes up and down. In math, it's the opposite. You know, Y axis goes up, but in Blender, you should keep in mind that X and Y are side by side, and then Z is up and down. So I'm going to disable Z right now. Now, if I want to move my cube along the X axis, I can hover over this red arrow, click and hold on my mouse, and then move it on the right side or move it on the left side, and that's it. And I can do the same thing for the Y axis and do the same thing for the Z axis like this. And one cool thing you can do is if you want to return this to back where it was, you can either click on Ctrl Z multiple times, or you can press on Alt G, and then Alt is going to clear the location. And one more thing you should keep in mind is, let's say you're viewing the object from here and you want to move it from your view, not along X, Y, or Z, but from your view. Then you could click on this white circle right here, click and hold, and then move this freely wherever you want, like this, from your view. That's pretty easy to do. Now I'm going to press on Alt G. Now let me show you how to rotate the object. For that, we're going to enable the rotate gizmos like this, and then you can see the gizmos change. First thing is, if you're viewing your object like from here and you want to rotate your object from your view, then pay attention to this white circle. I'm going to click and hold on this white circle and then rotate it either to the left or right, and that's it. If I want to move along the X, Y, or Z, it's pretty easy because there are colors shown. So like I told you, X is the red one. So I'm going to click and then rotate along the X axis or along the Z axis or along the Y axis like this. Now I'm going to press on Alt R to clear the rotation. And let me show you one of my favorite rotation tools is if you go in the middle, all right, on this orange dot, click and hold, then you're going to be able to access this trackball rotation and you're going to be able to free rotate. And that's especially useful when you're animating characters. Now I'm going to press on Alt R to clear the rotation. That's it about rotation. Make sure to practice. And now let's go to scale. In Blender, you're able to change the scale of your objects or the size of your objects. So, and once I click on scale, you can see the gizmos change. So if I want to change the entire scale of the cube, I can click on this white circle and then scale it up or scale it down like so. Or if I want to scale along a certain axis like the X, for example, I can click and hold this and then drag this up. Similar to the Y and similar to the Z axis, I can make this taller by clicking and dragging it like so. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to press an Alt S to clear the scale. So if you noticed, when I move the object, rotate the object and scale it, and I don't like anything, I can press on Alt to reset it. So Alt G is for location, Alt R is for rotation, and Alt S is for the scale. Now, one more thing I recommend you to do is first, if you're starting out, be sure to use these gizmos as it's pretty easy. But once you go more advanced, then you might find that you're not going to be needing them. So if that's the case, I'm going to show you how to navigate as well a lot quicker using shortcuts. So I'm going to press on this select box to make everything disappear. And I'm going to show you more ways to move around your objects without using these gizmos. So if you notice, Alt G is for resetting the location, which means that G is for grabbing the object. You can remember G for grab. So if I press on G key, you can see I can take the cube and move it wherever I want. For example, I can place it here, and that's it. Now, if I press on G and then hold, for example, one of the axes, like the Z one, I can press on Z and then move it up and down. I can press on G, Y, move it on the Y axis, and similarly G, X, move it on the X axis, and that's pretty much it. And if you want to clear the location, again, that's Alt G. Now, similar to the rotation, it's pretty easy to remember. G for grab and R to rotate. So if I press on R, I'm going to be able to rotate from my view. Or if I press on any keys, for example, Z, X, and then Y, I'm going to be able to rotate on the certain axis. But like I told you, my favorite rotation tool is trackball. And to access that, you can double tap R. So I'm going to press on R, and you can see I'm going to be able to trackball rotate. And I use RR pretty often while I'm animating. If I don't like it, again, I'm going to press on Alt R and then clear the rotation. And then scale is pretty easy, as again, you can press on S to scale. So press on S, and then scale it up like this or scale it down like this. Or I can press on S and then Y, Z, or X, and then scale it along whichever axis I want, like so. And then to clear the scale and reset the scale, I'm going to press on Alt S. So once again, G for grab, R for rotate, S for scale, and that's pretty much it. So feel free to pause the video and practice with this if you want. If you're already comfortable, then feel free to continue and follow along. Now, before I show you how to create and delete objects and do a bunch of stuff, we're going to change some preferences so we can make our lives easier. So what we need to do is go to Edit, click on Preferences, and then we're going to change a bunch of preferences from here. So first thing I'm going to do is go to System, and then make sure if you have a GPU inside your computer, especially NVIDIA, you use CUDA or optics. For example, I have the RTX 3060 laptop GPU, and I'm going to use optics. You can also use CUDA if you have older graphics cards like GTX ones, for example. If you have AMD, you can use HIP, or if you have Mac, you can use Metal. It's not listed here because I don't have a Mac, but if you have Mac, you should probably see Metal, and feel free to enable that. Now, we need to enable this because it's going to render our scenes a lot faster. We're going to be able to walk a lot faster, and it's just going to make our lives easier. One thing to keep in mind with Blender 5.0 as well is that if you go to backend, we have OpenGL and Vulkan. Vulkan is more experimental right now. A lot of people say it's actually going to speed up your viewport, but in my case, I choose OpenGL because whenever I enabled Vulkan, it was starting to lag my scene. So I have changed it to optics, GPU, or HIP, depending on what you want. I'm going to leave this at RTX 3050. And then you might think that enabling both your GPU and CPU, aka your graphics card or your processor together, is going to speed things up. But in most cases, if your CPU is a lot slower than your graphics card, it's going to slow the scenes down and slow the rendering down. So I usually disable my CPU and only keep my GPU. So that's pretty much it about the graphics card. And once we enable the graphics card, we're going to see it in the render settings later on, and I'm going to show you that too if you're new. Now, one thing I recommend you to do is go to Memory and Limits, and then take Undo Steps, click and hold on your left mouse, and then drag this on the right side, and then scroll this all the way up to 256, so that we're going to be able to undo as much as we want. Basically, I turn Undo Steps all the way up so I can Control Z many times, which means that whenever I'm animating and I make mistakes, I can press on Control Z many times without having to worry that I get stuck. One more thing I recommend you do is go to Network and then click on Allow Online Access. This is going to be pretty handy if you want to install add-ons quickly and then drag and drop them directly inside Blender. So make sure you enable this. And now speaking of add-ons, let's go inside the add-ons section and make sure we enable some add-ons. So what we need to do is search for an add-on called the Node Wrangler. Make sure you have the Node Wrangler and add-on enabled. If you want to enable this, click this and it's going to be ticked on like this. And it's going to become handy when we're working with nodes. So make sure you enable the Node Wrangler add-on. And next thing we need to do is go to Key Map, and we're going to change a few shortcuts here. So like I told you, you can click on Shift tilde. So let me minimize this for now. So if I click on Shift tilde, I'm going to be able to fly. But like I told you, I want to change it to Shift F, and that's pretty easy to do from the preferences. So I'm going to go back to Preferences, click on Name, make sure you're in Name. And this navigation that I just showed you is called Fly. So click on Fly, type Fly like this. And then you can see we have 3D view, view navigation, walk/fly. I can click on this and then click on Shift F and then set this to Shift F because I'm pretty used to using Shift F. Now I can click this and save preferences, but autosave preferences is enabled. Again, if I minimize this, now if I go to 3D view, I can click on Shift F, and now I'm going to be able to fly like so. So make sure you enable this from the preferences, click on walk fly, and then enable Shift F. One more thing I like to do is stay in a name and then search for frame selected. Now you can see in 3D view right here. I know it's a bunch of settings, might feel overwhelming, but if you go to 3D view, click on frame selected, and then click on this numpad period. Instead of numpad period, I want to set this to F. So let me show you. Since I have a numpad, I'm going to show you what it does. So for example, let's say I'm all the way over here working on my scene, and I want to select the camera and orbit and rotate it around the camera to work on it. I cannot do that right now, and it's pretty uncomfortable. So I can press on numpad period, and now it's going to jump me in front of the camera, and I'm going to be able to rotate around the camera. Similarly to the cube, I can do the same thing, numpad period, rotate, point light, numpad period, and then rotate. But I like to set this shortcut instead of numpad period to F. So again, I'm going to go back to the preferences, click on frame selected, go to 3D view, then click this, and then click on F. And now F is going to be set as my shortcut. So if I minimize this, and if I click on F, I'm going to be able to rotate around objects. You can also select a lot of objects and then press on F, and then it's going to select like the average point between these objects, and you're going to be able to rotate around them. One thing to keep in mind is if you're doing 3D modeling, now you don't have to follow along with this, but if I press on F, for example, it's going to fill like the faces and do weird stuff with this. So if you're 3D modeling a lot, then I recommend you don't set it to F and then keep it as numpad period. But since I'm animating most of the time and barely modeling, I'm going to be able to select this and then keep this at F. So for now, that's pretty much it about the preferences. I can close this, make sure to save this, but again, autosave is enabled, and then turn off the preferences. Now let me show you how to create and delete objects inside Blender. Like I told you, deleting objects is pretty easy. You can either click on the delete key or press on X and then delete. Now if I want to create a new cube, I can either go here in this menu and then click on add, and then we have a bunch of settings here. I can press on mesh and then add a cube from this list like this. Or alternatively, the shortcut is Shift A, and I recommend you get used to shortcuts. Right now it might feel overwhelming, but you're going to get used to them very quickly. So shortcut is Shift A to add. Now I'm going to press on mesh and then bring the cube like so. If I want to create a new object, I can press on Shift, mesh, and then let's, for example, create a UV sphere. And I don't see the UV sphere right now because it's stuck inside the cube, so I'm going to press on G and then move it outwards like this. Whenever you create an object, it's automatically selected. For example, if I create a cone, it's automatically selected. So I'm going to be able to press on G and then move it out like this. Now, when you press on Shift A, this menu might feel overwhelming because you see a lot of stuff here. But don't worry, all you have to know right now is these three: mesh, light, and then camera. That's it. We're going to learn all of those as we go on, but you're going to have to concern yourself with all of these. And this is a good time to tell you about the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, which means that if you learn Blender's 20% of the features, you're going to be able to create 80% of the stuff. Or if you're learning something new, then 80% of the results come from the 20% of the efforts. And Pareto principle is applied to a lot of other stuff, and you can look into it after this video. So my point is that you don't have to learn everything about Blender. I've been using Blender for many, many years, and I still don't know some stuff, and that's okay because it's not necessary to use. And if I don't know anything, I will learn it step by step. Now, I told you how to add the objects, but let's say I want to add a camera. Let's say we have no camera in the scene. It's pretty easy to do. I can click on Shift A, then click on camera, and now it's going to spawn it right inside the cube. So again, new objects are selected, so I'm going to press on G and then move it out like this. Now I'm going to press on numpad 0 to enter the camera view, or if you don't have a numpad, you can click on this button and then enter the camera view like so. Then click on Shift F and then place your camera wherever you want. So WASD, Q and E, and let's say I want to take a screenshot of these or take a picture of these. I'm going to place it right around here, and that's pretty much it. Now, if you're working on an animation, there might be some cases where you want to hide your object. For example, let's say this is my character and I'm animating my character like so, and this cube is distracting. I can press on H, and it's going to be permanently hidden. And if I want to unhide my object, I can press on Alt H, and now it's going to unhide. So again, H for hide, Alt H for unhide, and that's pretty much it. And now this is a great time to teach you a bit about the outliner and organization. So if I go to the site, it shows me everything I have seen in the text and icon format. So for example, I have a camera, and if I select the camera, it's going to be highlighted here as well. If I select the cone, it's going to be highlighted here. Same for the cube, sphere, and also the light like this. Similarly, I can select an object from here, and it's going to be selected in a 3D viewport as well. So let's say I'm working here and I'm lost and I want to find my camera or a cube. I can press on cube, for example. And now I'm going to go here and I press on F. Now it's going to be able to frame select and then orbit around the cube. So that's pretty useful when you're working on large scenes. One more thing I should tell you is that this eye icon determines what you see and don't see in the viewport, and this camera icon determines what you see and don't see in the final render. So let's say I'm working and I press on H on my cube. You can see it's hidden and the eye icon just disappeared, which means that I don't see the cube in the viewport. But if I render the final animation from the camera and this is enabled, it's going to be visible inside the camera. But if I disable this, then the cube won't be visible in the final animation as well. So be sure to keep that in mind when you're animating. Now I'm just going to press on H, Alt H, or similarly I can use this eye icon. So click here again, and then make the cube appear or disappear and do whatever I want basically. Now this outliner can be organized and customized way more, so we're going to go through that when we're going to import the scene and organize stuff. So I'm not going to overwhelm you with the stuff for now, and you can just leave this as default as it is right now. But to keep this as simple as possible, you can think of this collection as your folders inside your PC where you can drag and drop different assets and organize them. But we're going to go through them in the lighting segment, so don't worry about it for now. And now before we move on, I'm going to tell you a bit about the render settings. So if you remember, we want to edit preferences, system, and then adjusted the GPU settings. I enabled optics. Now, if you go to the render properties, which is this either TV or microwave button, I still don't know what this is. If I click here, you can see I have a bunch of settings from here. Now, default render engine is set to Eevee. And we have, if I click on Eevee, we have Eevee, Workbench, and Cycles. Workbench is not used for final renders. So I want you to pay attention to Eevee and Cycles. Cycles is basically the real-time ray tracing engine where you can create realistic, high-quality stuff. And Eevee is real-time fast render engine, which is not as accurate or realistic as Cycles, but it can still give you pretty good results and render scenes a lot faster. But for this tutorial, I want to use Cycles and show you how to get beautiful scenes done with Cycles. But you can absolutely get amazing results with Eevee and change a bunch of settings. And I recommend search for some Eevee tutorials if you want to learn how this works. So I'm going to click this and then switch this to Cycles. Now once I click on Cycles, I have a device option. Make sure you select the device and then click on GPU compute. If you don't see this, it means that you didn't enable GPU from the preferences or you don't have a GPU inside your PC. If that's the case and you feel like your PC is weak, then I highly recommend you switch to Eevee and then follow along with Eevee because you're going to be able to render scenes a lot faster and don't stress your computer. But if you're able, switch to Cycles, enable GPU, and that's it. One thing I also recommend you change is we have a bunch of settings, but don't worry about them for now. Go to the viewport. Under viewport, we have max samples. Take this and then type 10, for example, because 1024 is a lot of samples. We don't need them. Basically, samples determine the quality of the image and the noisiness of the image. So the more samples you have, the less noisy and cleaner your image looks. Then you go to the render settings. So this is what we will see inside the viewport, 10 samples, and then go to render settings. And for the final render, we can, for example, keep the samples at 50 for now. And that's pretty much it. So that's all I want you to change from the render properties. And now under the render properties, we have the output properties. On the output, we have the resolution, we have the FPS, frame rate, and we also have the output properties, which we're going to cover once we move to rendering. But don't worry about it for now. So what I want to do is go to frame rate and change this to your desired frame rate. So for YouTube videos and for 3D Minecraft animations, a good frame rate is 30 FPS. So I'm going to click this and then switch to 30. Now, you can also use 24, which is used mostly for films, but you can definitely use 24 as well. You can also use 60, but it's going to take a lot of time to render and you're going to need to render a lot more frames. So I think the sweet spot is 30 FPS, which I also use for many, many years. So I'm going to click this, switch to 30 FPS, and I leave this as it is. I'm also going to take the cone and the sphere and then delete them. I'm also going to move my camera closer to the point light. And I'm trying to rearrange the objects as they were when I opened Blender. So I'm using G to move these and then place them like so. And the last thing I recommend you change is go to this timeline. And then if I hover over this edge, I'm going to get these two arrows. If I click and hold and then move this up, I'm going to be able to slightly extend the timeline. And I like to have it somewhere over here. And also I want to start my animation from frame 0 or not frame 1. So I have this start, end, and then step, which is like same thing here. We have frame range, frame start, frame end, and frame step. Step means on which frame we are on currently, but we're going to cover that in the animation episode. For now, what I want you to change is the start frame. So click on this arrow to move it on the left side, or you can also click here and type 0 and then press enter to confirm, or press anywhere on the screen, left click on the screen to confirm. And also I want to move this timeline playhead to 0 as well. So I'm going to click this, move this to 0, and that's pretty much it. So I adjusted the timeline, the render properties, the output properties, and the last thing we need to do is if I close Blender, everything is going to be forgotten. So next time I open Blender, I want everything to be saved. So for that, we can go to File on the top left screen, click on Defaults, and then click on Save Startup File, and then click on Overwrite. In my case, in your case, it might be a different menu, but make sure to confirm this. And once we confirm this, whenever we open up Blender, all of our changes will be saved. So that's pretty much it for the first segment of the video. Now feel free to pause this and practice what you learned, but if you're ready to move on to the next segment, then let's continue. In the next segment, we're going to download and organize the necessary resources which are going to help us create amazing, beautiful cinematic Minecraft animations. So let's begin. Now I'm going to minimize Blender and go inside my browser and show you different resources which you need to download. So first thing we need to download is the MC Prep Addon, which is going to make our life a lot easier, prep the materials and import assets pretty easily. So go to this website or click the link in the description, scroll down and then click on Download MC Prep. And this is going to ask you to save it in any folder you want. So I highly recommend to go to the MC Structured folders, then go to Add-ons, and then save it inside the add-ons like this. So I'm going to click on Save. And then MC Prep is an add-on of Blender. And whenever you're installing add-on, you don't have to unzip the files. So make sure to keep them as zipped. And now we can move on to the next resource, which is Mineways. Mineways is going to allow us to export the world from Minecraft game and then import it into Blender. But in my last video, I got a lot of complaints about Mineways. People think that it's unsafe. So because of that, I'm also going to tell you how to use JMC2 OBJ. But first, I'm going to go to the Mineways website and you can click this to download this for Windows, or you can click here to download for the Mac and click here to download for the Linux, which have different instructions. So I'm going to click on Download for Windows. And I like to save this into Assets and then go to Maps, and then download it inside Maps because we're going to use it to import and export maps. And nextly, we have JMC2 OBJ. Again, you can go to these websites or just click the link in the description. And once you go to JMC2 OBJ, you're going to be greeted with this screen. Click on Download Latest Release. Then it's going to jump you to this GitHub page. Scroll down and then click on the JMC2 OBJ.jar. We need this .jar file. So click and download this. But if you already use Mineways, then you don't have to download this. I'm going to click here, download, and then again, save this into Assets. Save this into Maps so that we stay organized, and then click on Save, and that's pretty much it. Now, the next resource we need is the Boxscape Studios Asset Pack or the Rig Pack. Now, you need to go to this Nari3U website, make sure you're on this tab, or you can click the link in the description, it will jump you here. Then scroll down, you can read the info if you want, and then scroll down and then click on Download Now, which is going to jump you into the Dropbox file. Once you're here, click on Download, and it's going to ask you to sign in, and once you sign in, make sure to download the file and organize it. Then again, go to MC Structured folder, click on Assets, and then we're going to be able to save this inside Assets. I'm going to click on Save, and now it's going to download right inside my folder. And lastly, we're going to need the Minecraft character rig. For that, we have two options. I'm going to be using BPS Rig version 4 throughout this tutorial, but you can also use the Woodplank Rig, which I just released a few months ago, made by Entertainer007. So first, I'm going to show you how to download the Woodplank Rig. So you can go to this link, click the link in the description, click on Download Now. Then you can enter your email address, your first and last name. It doesn't have to be your actual real last name. And if you want to see the newsletters and updates from me, then you can check on SEDB newsletter, updates and offer via email. But again, you don't have to do that. I'm going to check this for now and then click on Download Now. Now it's going to take you to this download page and then click on Download. And I recommend you save this into the rigs. So again, go to MC Structured folders, click on Assets, Rigs, and then save the Woodplank Rig right here. But since in this tutorial I'm going to be using the BPS Rig version 4, I'm also going to show you how to download it because I had a lot of questions about it in my last tutorial series. So for that, you need to join the Squared Media Discord server. Again, the link for the Squared Media Discord server will be provided in the description. And once you join, make sure to expand the public channels, go to #help and support, and then type /rig help. Like so. Click on Enter. And then make sure to choose version 4 like this. You can also choose the Pro Rig, which is a new, more advanced rig. But for this tutorial, I'm going to be using the BPS Rig version 4. So choose this, click on Enter. And now it's going to give me the download link. So select this, click on BPS Rig version 4. And then click here and then confirm it so that the rig will start downloading. So once you download this, I have my downloads folder on my left screen. So I'm going to go to the Assets, Rigs, then take my BPS Rig version 4 and drag and drop it right here. So now, once we download the files, we need to unzip them. So you only need to keep the MC Prep add-on as zipped. So if I go to add-ons, make sure MC Prep is left as zipped, but let's unzip the other assets. So I'm going to go to the assets. So first I'm going to unzip the Cycles Minecraft Rig BSS Edit. I'm going to right click on Extract All, click on Extract so that it extracts right inside this folder. And once you unzip this, you can delete the zipped file if you want, and then go inside this folder and explore different blend files you have. There's a lot of resources you can explore after this tutorial. Now I'm going to go back to Assets again, go to Rigs, and then unzip both BPS and Woodplank Rig. So first I'm going to right click on the BPS Rig and do the same thing, Extract All, Extract here, and then right click on the Woodplank, Extract All, and Extract here. And that's pretty much it. You can delete the zip files if you want. So click here, delete, and then delete. And we're left with the default folders. So if you open these, we have different Blender files for Woodplank Rig and the BPS Rig. You can open them and explore them as well. Now let's go back to Assets again. and then go to maps. And then we have JMC to OBJ, which we can directly open. But for Mineways, we need to unzip it. So I'm going to right click on Mineways and unzip this as well. And once it's unzipped, I'm going to be able to delete the zip file. So click here and then delete this and then keep the unzipped file. And since in this tutorial I plan to use the BPS Rig version 4, it's worth to mention that I also have some animation libraries using BPS Rig version 4. So basically I have pre-made ready-to-use animations. So if you go to my Patreon page, scroll down to the popular posts and then click on this 8 animations free animation library. You can click this and then download the free animation library. I'm not going to do this for this tutorial because it might be a little overwhelming, but if you're interested, you can download this free one, try it out yourself, and then also watch the tutorial step-by-step instructions, which I'm also going to provide in the description. And if you like it, you can actually go back to the shop and then shop for all other animation libraries. For example, the best one is the premium animation library, which has 120 ready-to-use drag and drop loopable animations. You can use them once you learn how animation works, how timeline and inlay editor works, and this is going to save you a lot of time, especially if you're using the BPS Rig version 4. So if you're interested, the link will be in the description, but for the beginner tutorial series, I'm not going to use the animation library to keep things simple. Now we have everything installed, everything is ready and organized. I recommend you download this MC structure folder if you haven't already, and then organize everything cleanly here so that we can access them later on. Now let's go back to Blender, and since I mentioned that MC Prep is an add-on, we need to install the add-on directly inside the Blender. So there are two ways. We can either drag and drop MC Prep directly inside the Blender, or you can install it manually. So let me show you how to drag and drop first. Now I'm going to go back to my organized folders. So I'm going to go to add-ons, click on MC Prep, and then drag and drop it directly inside the Blender. And then make sure to leave everything as default and click on OK. And now MC Prep will be installed like this. So if I press on N, I'm going to be able to bring up the side panel. We have different settings over here. And if I press on MC Prep, as you can see, I just installed the MC Prep add-on. But if drag and drop didn't work for you, then you can click on Edit, Preferences, click on Add-ons, then click this, and then click on Install from Disk. You can go to the Structure folders, Add-ons, and you can double click on this or click on Install from Disk, and it will be installed as well. And those are two ways to install MC Prep. So that's it about downloads, organization, and installing. Now that the boring parts are over, we can continue actually animating, create the world, and import it inside the Blender. So if you're excited, let's keep going. Now, the scene looks empty, which means we need a world. We need to import the Minecraft world inside Blender. And the way we can do that, there are actually multiple ways. But the very first way is if you have Minecraft, you can open the game, launch it, create a world, export it using Mineways or JMC, and then import it directly inside Blender, which is what we're going to do. However, in my last tutorial series, I got a lot of questions about what to do if I don't have a Minecraft. And there are actually many ways to do Minecraft animations, even if you don't have the Minecraft game. So I'm going to show you some examples. First, you can actually go to the Minecraft Maps website or click the link in the description, click on Browse Maps, and then you're going to be able to download a lot of maps online. So you can actually use some of these maps here, explore them, download them, and then import them inside Blender. You can also go to Planet Minecraft, click here, and then click on Maps. You can then explore some maps here, use the map exporters like Mineways or JMC, and then import them into Blender. You can go to Sketchfab as well, and then search for Minecraft map, for example. And you're going to be able to download 3D OBJ files of the Minecraft maps. They might be different formats, but you can still drag and drop them and use them. So you can use some of the maps here. If I use them in your place, I would actually credit the creators so that they feel appreciated and recognized. I usually leave a link to the description of their channel or their socials. So feel free to explore these websites. But for this tutorial, I'm going to open up Minecraft, create the world, export it, and then import it directly inside Blender. So let's do that. So here I have my Minecraft launcher ready. I'm going to click on play and open up the game. It's very self-explanatory, especially if you played Minecraft. So I'm not going to go through a bunch of details. So here I am inside Minecraft. I can click on Create New World. I'm going to choose Creative. And then I'm going to name this something like Tutorial. And I can create a new world and then explore it. Then I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks on how to import the world, how to import the Nether and the End if that's something you're looking for. So I spawned right here. It's probably not the best place, but I can actually fly around and explore different places. So now I'm quickly going to fly around and find a place that I like, that I want to import inside Blender, something that is not too heavy and looks pretty. And I can actually use inside animation. So I found this place that I really like. So if I want to see this place inside Mineways or JMC, I'm going to be able to mark some chunks. So I'm going to take a block, which is going to be different from this biome. So if, for example, take a gold block, it's going to be noticeable from the sky. So let's take a gold block. And then let's start building like a small chunk. So I'm going to start building up from this tree on the top. And then I'm going to build like a giant square, which I'm going to be able to see from the sky. It doesn't have to be anything perfect because we can just delete this later on inside the Blender. So build something random like this, which you can see from the sky. And then once we enter the top-down view like this from Mineways, we're going to be able to see that. I usually type letters. For example, if I have like a fight scene, I usually mark this at F as I want to mark an area for a fight scene. Or if I want to mark a village, I type V and so on. But I'm just going to make this bigger so that I see it from the sky. I'm going to be able to break these blocks like this. And one thing I want to show you is I got a lot of questions last time on how to export Nether and how to export the End. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place a bed somewhere over here. So I mark my respawn point. I'm going to show you why later on. I'm going to place a bed, make sure the respawn point is set. So now if you want to import a Nether inside your animation, first thing you need is go to the Nether portal, explore it for a little bit to load the chunks, and then import it via Mineways or JMC. So let's do that. Let's use the obsidian blocks. And then let's also use flint and steel. And then let's build a portal somewhere where it's not going to ruin our scene. We can actually break it later on, but I'm going to start building like here, for example, because if I build this on grass, it's going to ruin the scene. So I'm going to build a small Nether portal right here. And then I'm going to light it with flint and steel. Let's enter the Nether portal. And then we are inside Nether. That's pretty cool. So one thing you need to do is obviously remember where your portal is if you don't want to get lost. But let's fly around to load in some chunks. So I'm just going to fly around the scene and then explore Nether for a bit so that it loads in Mineways and JMC later on. I think this area should be enough. Now I'm going to go back to my portal. And then let's go to the end dimension as well. So I'm going to build like an end portal maybe here. So let's do end. Let's use this and then use the Eye of Ender. So let's use the end portal frame and then Eye of Ender. Hopefully I can build this in the air. I don't know. Let's see. I haven't played Minecraft in a while. So if I'm doing something weird, don't make fun of me, please. So let's place the eyes right here. Okay, it didn't create it. I don't know why.
Stop the cap.
Yeah, let's see. Hopefully this works. Yay, finally. Okay, so I built the end portal. I'm going to jump inside. And once I'm inside, I don't care about fighting the Ender Dragon. So what I'm going to do instead is fly around and make sure the chunks are loaded. Get this Ender Dragon. Boom. All right, so I'm going to fly around, make sure all of the end stones are visible. Now I'm going to type this command to go back to my spawn point. Respawn. And there we go. So what I basically did is I loaded Nether and I also loaded the End dimension. So now I'm going to be able to close Minecraft and load in any of the dimensions I want. So make sure you have the area marked, which you want to import inside the Blender. Then stand in the area where you want your character to be standing. For example, somewhere over here looks good. And then I'm going to press on escape and then quit Minecraft. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to turn off Minecraft. And we need to export the Minecraft world inside an exporter. So first I'm going to use Mineways. But if you don't like Mineways, then you can skip to this part and use JMC to OBJ. So I'm going to go to Assets, Maps, and then open up Mineways, and I'm going to open this one. If you have old machine, you can click on Mineways 32, but if you have a new machine, you can click on Mineways, double click, and then open this up. Once you open Mineways, it's going to look like this. You can actually click here to load in the full screen. And if you want to find your world, it's super, super easy. What you want to do is click on File, Open World. Now it's going to load all of your worlds. And since I named this tutorial, it's going to be easy to find. So click on Tutorial. And now it's going to load in my tutorial world. And if you want to navigate, you can do left click, hold and drag, and then move it side by side. Now, if I move to the right side, you can see I marked this area, which is why it's visible with the gold blocks. And I also have my tiny bed visible over here. So that's why it's important to mark your area. Now, if you can't find your area, if your world is too big, you loaded too many chunks, what you can do is click on View, and then click on Jump to Player. And now it's going to jump wherever you were standing, wherever you were last standing, I believe. So that's a comment I got from my last video. It's actually pretty helpful too. So now if you want to mark this area, what you can do is right click, hold and drag, and then mark an area which you want to import inside the Blender. You can click on yes, so that Mineways optimizes it for you. Now this area is too big, so it's going to have a hard time to load in. So I'm going to hover over this corner, right click, and then scale this down like so. Also scale this down. We don't need the world to be too big. We're just going to make a quick animation, so it doesn't have to be something fancy. What you also want to do is zoom in using your scroll wheel and then play around with this. You want this area to be pink, but once it's pink, you don't want to go overboard on like 45, 20 or something, because it's going to import blocks which are underground and which are not going to be visible inside the animation. So what I want to do is go to this area where everything turns pink, including the water. And now we can stop like this so that we don't import like any excess blocks. And now if you want to export this world and then import it as an OBJ in Blender, it's pretty easy. What you want to do is go to File, click on Export for Rendering, or Ctrl-R is the shortcut. Then what I want to do is go to MC Structured Folders, go to the Assets, Maps, and then let's save our map and name this something like Tutorial Mineways. I'm going to click on enter. So make sure each block is 1000 millimeters high or 1 meter high, just like inside Minecraft. And we want to replicate the same thing inside Blender too. Make sure you have this export individual textures check. And what I also like to do is uncheck this, create a block faces at the borders, because we're not going to be able to see those blocks from the camera view and they're going to create unnecessary geometry. And once you're ready, click on OK. And now it's going to export. Now let me show you how to import Nether. So as you saw, I struggled to create the end portal and I also created Nether portal. So if you want to do that, you can click on View and then click on View Nether. Once you view Nether, you can see it's going to load everything that we saw inside our view. So if you want to do import Nether, you can actually do the same thing. Right click, hover over this, click on yes. Make sure it's like pink, but not all the way down, you know, something like this. And do the same thing, export. And we can do the same thing for the end dimension. So I'm going to click View and then click on View the End. Now, if the end is not visible for you in Mineways, then you can go back to Minecraft, enter the end dimension, and then quit the game from there. Now it's going to be visible. So I can actually mark this like so, click on yes so that it's optimized, make sure it's pink, not all the way down, but you can actually do this all the way down since end dimension is pretty small and it's not going to be too heavy. And one important thing to do is once you click on File and then Export for rendering, it's going to give you these two files, OBJ and MTL. Make sure both of these files are kept in the same folder so that it's more organized. In my case, it's kept in the maps folder, which is exactly what I want. And later, we're going to be able to import OBJ inside Blender. And if you want to go back to your default world, you can click on View and then uncheck this or click on this again. And now it's going to jump into your default world. The last thing I want to show you with Mineways is if you downloaded the map online and you don't have the Minecraft game, then you can click on File, Open World, and instead of loading your world, you can click on Find Your World and make sure to locate this wherever you saved it inside the folder. So if you click this, it's going to jump you inside your folders. Make sure to locate wherever you saved your map and then load it from there. And it's going to open up like it did for me. And now let me show you how to use JMC to OBJ in case you don't want to use Mineways. So I'm going to go to the JMC Structure folder, Assets, Maps, and then click on JMC to OBJ. Double click, run this, and then it's going to look like this. I want to expand this so that I see on full screen. And loading the world is a bit different in JMC to OBJ. What I want to do is click on these three dots and then locate our Minecraft worlds. So if you want to locate your Minecraft world inside the game, it's pretty easy. If you're on Windows, you can click on Windows and R key and then type %appdata% and then click on Enter. Once you do that, click on .minecraft, click on Saves, and then be sure to remember this. So it's, in my case, it's in User, App Data, Roaming, Minecraft, and Saves. So you can keep this on if you want. So what I'm going to do is, again, click on these three dots, go to this PC, C, then go to Users, User, App Data, Roaming, and then click on .minecraft, Saves. And once you're inside your Saves folder, it's basically your world folder. So I'm going to click on Tutorial, click on Choose World Folder, and then right here, click on Load. And now it's going to show your entire world like so. So if you remember, in Mineways, you can left click and drag. In JMC, it's the opposite. You can right click and drag to move around. So I already found my area thanks to the gold blocks that I used to mark the area. So if you can zoom in and out, just like you can in Mineways. And if you want to mark a chunk, you can actually use left click. So left click and drag and mark a small area like so. So make sure to customize your chunk like this. And then once you're happy with it, make sure to play around with the floor settings. Now the floor is a bit too big right now. Again, we're going to import blocks which we don't see, which we don't care about, like blocks underground. So what I want to do is take this and experiment. For example, instead of -64, I'm going to change this to like +20, for example. And then make sure you don't have any black lines. So if I go high, for example, on like 100, some of the blocks are going to turn black, which means that like they're not going to be imported and they're not going to be visible. And only the blocks which are like tall and high in the air are going to be imported. So let's choose a sweet spot. For example, something like 20 should be enough. And once I set this to 20, as you can see, it looks a lot better. And I'm going to be able to export this area. So once you're ready to export, click on Export right here. And you can leave these settings as default as they are. Make sure Optimize Mesh is checked because that's one of the advantages of JMC. It's going to optimize your scene and make it run a lot faster and render a lot faster. And I'm going to click on Export and find my desired folder. So again, MC Structure Folders, click on Assets, Maps, and then let's name this Tutorial, JMC, and then click on Select Export Destination. Now it's going to export your world from JMC. And exporting is finished. Now, if you want to load in the Nether and the End, it's pretty easy. You can go up here in the dimension, click on, for example, Nether, and then click on Load. Now, if you're not going to see the Nether here, what you can do is go back to Minecraft, enter the Nether, and then quit the game from Nether, and then make sure you stay there. And I think that should fix the issue. If I click on End, it's going to jump me into the end, and now it's going to be loaded like so. So that's pretty much it about Mineways and JMC. Now, once we exported the world, we're ready to continue and go back to Blender. Now let's go back to Blender, and what we want to do is import our Minecraft world inside the scene. So first thing we need to do is press on N to bring out the side panel, and make sure to go to MC Prep Addon so that we're inside the MC Prep Addon section. Now, if you only want to import the world which you exported with JMC, click here. But for the rest of this tutorial, I'm going to use Mineways. So I'm going to click here and then open my Mineways world. What I'm going to do is click on OBJ World Import, click on this button, and then let's locate our world. So that's why our organization is imported. So I'm going to click on MC Structured Folders, click on Assets, Maps. So this is the JMC world and this is the Mineways one. We need to click on mineways.obj. So open this one. And now it's going to load in our world. So if I zoom out using my scroll wheel, I'm going to be able to see the entire world right here. But it looks white, it doesn't look proper. So first thing we need to do is keep everything selected, don't deselect everything. Then go up here, I'm going to explain what these do in a bit, but click on this drop-down menu. And then scroll down and then make sure you enable texture. And then you can disable outline and specular lighting because it looks a lot better in the viewport. And also turn off this menu. And then what we need to do is click on Prep Materials right here. You can leave most of these settings by default. If you want to, for example, animate textures like water and lava, you can click here, but we don't have to do it for now. So I'm going to leave these settings as they are and then click on OK. Now it's going to prep the materials and then make them look like Minecraft inside Blender. Now I'm going to press on Alt-A to deselect everything. And if you want to import the JMC world, I'm going to show you how to do that too. So what I'm going to do now is, for now, you don't have to follow along. So I'm going to press on A and then press on H to hide everything. Now I'm going to go to JMC to OBJ, click on OBJ World Import, go to Maps, and then import the JMC OBJ. Now, the difference between Mineways and JMC is that when you import the world, it's going to import it like far away from your scene. So I can zoom out and you can see I have my world right here. And that's a good time to tell you about clipping distance. So as you can see, the world is far away. And if I zoom out, the world disappears. So what you can do is go to View. And then you can see we have Clip Start and then Clip End settings. And we also have Focal Length. So what I want to do is click on Clip End. And instead of 1000, change it to something like 10,000. And now I'm going to be able to see far away from the scene. So now what we want to do is select a JMC to OBJ world, and everything is like one giant object basically, which is why JMC is great with optimization. And what we want to do now is to make this world appear in the center of our origin, which is like the crossing between Y and X axis. What I want to do is take this origin point, which is this orange dot right here, and then move it in the center of the mass. So first I'm going to select the OBJ world, right click, click on Set Origin, and then click on Origin to Geometry. And now this orange dot is going to move from here to the center. And last thing I need to do is press on Alt-G to move this in the start position of the world. And now I can press on F to zoom in and then move around the world like so. And now you can see I imported the world. Again, if I have everything selected, I can go to MC Prep, click on Prep Materials, and that's going to prep materials and make them look like Minecraft for our final render. Now, I'm not going to use this world for our final animation. So what I'm going to do is hide this. And the way I can hide this is if I go to the outliner, I can click on this edge and then scroll this down to make it look bigger. So whenever you import worlds, Blender automatically creates collection for them. So you have Mineways collection and a JMC collection. Now, for now, I'm going to hide JMC. And the way I can do that is click on this button, and then it's going to uncheck and then hide everything. So it's going to hide from the viewport and hide from the final render. And if you remember from the first segment, since I hid my Mineways world previously, if I want to unhide it, I can press on Alt-H. Now it's going to unhide everything else that I have selected, including my camera and the cube right here. So I'm going to keep using the Mineways world as an example. Now, the first thing I recommend you to do is select your grass blocks. Also select the fern blocks, shift select them, and then press on G and then Z. So I lock it on the Z axis and then type minus 0.5 on your keyboard so that they move down by 0.5 meters. This is going to look a lot better in the final animation because whenever we have our grass up like this, it looks a bit weird and it gets in the way of our characters. And another thing I want to do is select the bed and then delete this because I don't need the bed. So I'm going to select this and then press X and delete. So first thing we need to do is while we set up our scene is we want to bring our character in and bring our camera and then basically prepare for lighting and then animation. So what I want to do is click on Shift F, for example, or you can use your zoom in and out navigation and find the area where you want to move. So for that, I'm going to use the 3D cursor. So in Blender, we have this tiny handy tool called the 3D cursor, which is right around the world origin right here. If you want to move it, you can do Shift and then right click. And then wherever you point your mouse and do Shift right click, it's going to move the cursor right there. So I'm going to move my 3D cursor like right around here on this grass block. So if you import assets, you can move them easily using 3D cursor. And I'm going to show you how to do more stuff with the 3D cursor later on. So make sure you have 3D cursor wherever you want to place your character. Make sure you're prepared for that. Now, before we move on any further, I want to show you different view modes that Blender has to offer. For now, we're in the default solid shading. So if I click on solid shading, I'm going to be right here. And I can customize this further and change, for example, to matte cap, flat, which is a lot brighter. You can do that while you're animating. But I'm going to stay in studio for now. Now, if I click on this wireframe, the left one, you can see I'm going to be able to enter the wireframe view and see through different objects. Now, by default, when you enter wireframe, the toggle X-ray is enabled. You can enable or disable this using Alt-Z. So if I click on Alt-Z, as you can see, I'm no longer able to see through objects. But if I press on Alt-Z, I'm going to be able to see through a lot of objects, which is pretty useful in a lot of cases. But for now, we're not going to be using that. So I'm going to press on Alt-Z and then go back to solid mode. And after the solid mode, we have the material preview, which is going to give more accurate representation of what your materials are going to look like in the viewport. But as you can see, it's going to start to slow the scene. So it's not really ideal to keep material preview while you're animating, but it's actually pretty useful if you want to preview some materials or the object. What you also can do additionally in the material view is you can fly around or go back to the scene like this, and then click here and enable scene lights and then scene world. And because we don't have a world or the sky imported, that's why everything turned dark. So this actually gets closer to what the final result is going to be. But if you want to get even closer to the final result, what you can do is first disable these and then go to the rendered preview. And this is going to show us what the final animation is going to look like once we export it and render the scene. Right now, everything is dark because we have no lighting, we have no world imported, but we're going to fix that in a bit. So I'm using Cycles engine right now. And as you remember, I set the samples in this first segment to 10. If I increase the samples, it's going to take a lot more time to load, but it's going to look a lot cleaner. But since it's the viewport, we don't need the samples to be high, so I can actually keep this at 10. And one thing I want to show you is I want to show you the difference between Eevee cycles. For example, everything is lagging right now. It's a lot slower and a lot slower to load. But if I click on cycles and then switch this to Eevee, you can see everything is a lot faster. It's like real time. And Eevee shows you what your final animation is going to look like in real time, which is pretty fast. Now, if I go back to material view and then go to cycles, and enable scene worlds and scene light, this is pretty much the same as Eevee. So if I switch to Eevee's rendered view, it's pretty much the same as Cycles material view enabled with scene lights and scene world. It's pretty close. But again, for this tutorial, I'm going to switch to Cycles, switch to solid mode, and first import the characters and light the scene using Cycles step by step. Now that we learned how to import the world and how to view Blender with multiple shadings, now it's time to learn how to import the characters or assets inside our scene. That's pretty easy to do. As long as we're organized, we can find everything easily. So if you want to import assets, what you want to do is go to the top left corner, click on File, click on Append, and now we need to append our character. So what we want to do is go to the MC Structured folders, go to Assets, Rigs, and then let's import the BPS Rig version 4. So double click on the folder, go to the blend one, not the beta, but the blend one, double click on this, go to collection, and then let's import the character. And then it's going to be imported in the world origin, which is why we're not able to see the character. So if we, for example, go down to the world origin, you can see the character is imported and character is selected. So if you remember, I moved the 3D cursor right here. So once I have my character selected, I'm going to be able to press G and then move it up manually. But a cool trick you can do is as soon as you have your object or character selected, click on Shift S and then click on Selection to Cursor. And whatever you have selected will jump into in front of your cursor. And now I want to orbit around my character. So I'm going to select the outline of my character and then press on F. And now I'm going to be able to move around and orbit around my character. Now, before we continue, it's very, very important to save the scene. Right now, you can see it's unsaved. So if you want to save your scene, click on File, Save As, then go to your MC Structured folders, click on Project Files, and name this whatever you want. I'm going to name this Tutorial. Click on Enter, click on Save As. And now we're going to be able to save the file, and it's going to have the name and the location right here. And whenever you're working or whenever you're making changes, I highly recommend to get used to the shortcut, which is Control S. Control S is quickly going to save your scene. So you can either go here and click on Save, but I recommend to get used to shortcut, Control S, and press this often because sometimes when you're working on your scenes, Blender might crash. But in case Blender crashes, what you can do is go to File, click on Recover, and then click on autosave, and you will be able to load some of your autosaves. You might lose a few minutes of the progress, but the autosave features saves most of your scene while you were working on it. But still, it's better to give it the habit of pressing Control S. Now, I want my character to be facing right here because I want to place my camera right here and film the character like in front of these trees. So I can select this character outline, and if you remember, the way you can rotate objects is press on R, and if I want to rotate along the Z-axis, I'm going to press on Z, and then rotate this right here. But you can also type values. For example, I can press on R, Z, and then type 90. and it's going to rotate the character on the 90 axis. But since I want him to be facing forward, I'm going to press on RZ and then type negative or minus 90. And now the character is going to be flipped in front. And before we continue with any animation or lighting or any fancy stuff, I want to show you how to organize your outliner so that you can work a lot cleaner and more efficiently. So I recommend you to create these 4 main collections. First one, I'm going to right click, new collection, and then double click on this, and let's name this map with all capitals, like so. Next thing we're going to create is right click, new collection, and let's create a vegetation. And by vegetation, I mean leaves and grass and everything else we can hide temporarily while we're animating. And then I'm going to right click, new collection, and let's name this assets. And this is where we're going to drag and drop the character, the sword, or every other asset we're going to import. And lastly, I'm going to right click, click on new collection, double click on this, and let's name this studio. And in studio, I'm going to drag and drop my camera, lights, and everything else. Now, if you want to make this prettier, you can actually color code this. So for example, if I click on map, right click, I can scroll down and then find different options. For example, I like to make my map look brown. Then I'm going to right click on vegetation and then choose a green color. For the characters, I like to choose the orange color, but you can choose any of the colors you want. And I'm going to right click on the studio and choose a bright yellow color so that I know what is where. Now, since I have my world file here in the Mineways world, what I want to do is select this, hold, and then drag and drop this inside the map folder. And now it's going to be organized inside the map folder. Now, even though the JMC world is hidden, I'm still going to take this and drag and drop this inside map collection as well, like so. Now, to give you an example of how to move objects into different collections, I'm going to select one of these leaves, for example, the oak leaves, and then I can press on M, and this is going to give me a menu of the collection. So what I can do is click on vegetation, and now the oak leaves are going to move into vegetation. So if I hide the vegetation collection, the leaves are going to be hidden as well. So if I, for example, don't want to see the grass while I'm animating before rendering, I can press on M, move to vegetation, do the same thing for the fur, select this, M, vegetation, do the same thing for the leaves, and then vines and everything else, but you don't have to do it for now. So as you can see, this scene is empty. And the great thing about this is that it's going to run a lot faster. I'm going to be able to animate smoothly and play back my animation in real time a lot faster. But again, you don't have to do it if you have a stronger PC. I'm also going to select these and move them into vegetation, and that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to go back to my character using Shift, middle mouse, and then panning around and then zooming in. And what I also want to do is select my character collection and drag and drop it inside the assets, but I cannot find it. So what I can do is, for example, select a different object. And wherever you select a different object, the collection in which you have the object is going to light up. For example, this one. Now, if I select my character, as you can see, this icon lights up, which means that I have my character inside the map collection. So if I expand this, you can see the character icon is lit up in the Mineways world tutorial world. So before I imported my character, I had this collection selected. So I think I left click on the collection and it was selected. And whenever you have a certain collection selected, if you import an asset using File Append, Blender is going to drag and drop that inside the collection which you had selected before. So if I have selected the Mineways world and imported the character, it's going to be dragged and dropped there. But I don't want it to be there. So I'm going to expand this and then find my BPS character rig, which is this collection right here. So I can collapse this collection to organize it, then take this and then drag and drop this inside the assets collection, like so. So now I can expand or collapse assets and then hide or unhide my BPS rig. And if I import a sword or any other assets, I'm going to first select assets and then click on File, Append, and then drag and drop them like so. Now what I want to do is take the camera like this. Camera is like right here in the world origin. So I'm going to take the camera and I can either drag and drop this inside Studio from here, or alternatively, I can hover over the viewport, press on M, and then click on Studio, and now it's going to be moved into Studio. Same thing I'm going to do with the point light, press on M, move to Studio, and I'm going to select the default cube, and since I don't want to use it inside the animation, I'm going to press on X, and then delete the default cube as always. Now I'm going to go back to my scene. So you can either manually go back to your scene like this, or you can actually go to your outliner, expand the BPS character collection, click on the BPS character rig right here. It's going to be selected in the viewport as well. And then press on F. Now it's going to jump you in front of the BPS character. And the cool thing you can do is you can also rename your assets. So I'm going to double click on this and then name this Steve, so that I have my Steve character right. So now I'm going to click on the first collection. We don't need this because it's empty. There's nothing here. So I'm just going to select this collection and then click on delete. And now it's going to be deleted. So I'm going to collapse the map, collapse the assets, Studio, and I'm actually going to take this vegetation and then drag and drop this inside map so that we're even more organized. So you can see how clean and fun it looks, right? You can actually expand this and find your assets pretty easily like so. If you actually click this and then drag down, you can expand all of these together, or if you click and drag, you can collapse all of these together. So that's a pretty cool feature of Blender. So anyway, that's it about the organization. Now we can move on to the fun stuff. Now it's time to show you how to customize the character. So I have detailed tutorials about BPS Rig version 4 and also my own Woodplank character rig in the description. There are going to be these videos so you can recognize them in the thumbnails. But if you want to access them, you can check out the link in the description and you can watch detailed tutorials. But I'm still going to show you some basics of this rig. So first of all, if you don't want to have Steve in your scene and you want to have your own skin, what you can do is select this material icon on top of the character, select this, it's going to be outlined in orange, and what you want to do is go inside the material properties. So let me tell you a quick thing about Blender properties. Some properties are enabled by default no matter what you do, but some properties only appear when you select certain things. For example, if I go to Studio and select the camera, I'm going to be able to enter the camera properties. If I select the light properties are going to appear. But if I go over the character's head on top of Steve's head and select the material icon, I'm going to be able to see the material properties right here. So click here. And this actually gives you a lot of flexibility to customize your character. So first, if you want to change the skin, make sure you access the material properties. Then click on skin. And what you want to do is make sure you're in surface and then click on X and then load in your Minecraft skin. For example, I'm going to load in my Woodplank Minecraft skin. I'm going to click this. And then my skin is going to be loaded. But as you can see, I have an issue. It looks weird. And the reason is that the character rig comes with its own eyes. So to fix this issue, there are multiple skin editors. For example, you can go to Nova Skin, Minecraft Skins, or Skindex, or the Neat Cool Shoes. I personally like to use Neat Cool Shoes. So what I do is I disable the second layer. Then I go to the paint. Then I go to tools. And then I click on this dropper. And then select my skin color like this. And then basically paint over the eyes to make the eyes disappear. Enable the second layer. And now I'm going to be able to save it and download it and then rename this to something like Woodplank Eyeless or whatever you want. Click on export image and I'm going to name this Woodplank Eyeless or just name whatever you want. Now I'm going to go back to Blender and let me show you the difference. So if I select the material icon again, click on X and then load in a different skin. So if I load in Woodplank Eyeless, you can see it looks a lot better because the rig has its own eyes and now my skin is no longer getting in the way of the rig. So that's what I advise you to do. If you actually want to animate facial expressions, you can import the eyeless rigs. But if you don't want to animate any facial expressions and you want to remove the facial bones, then I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Now let me show you how to customize this rig further before you start animating. So I'm going to go to the material preview so that I see materials changing. Then I'm going to go to pupils right here. And now I'm going to be able to change the color of the eyes. So what you can do is select the right one, for example, and then make this like light blue, green, or whatever you want. I like to move this towards brownish and then make this dark like so. Now you can also give your character heterochromia, which means they have two colored eyes. What you can do is enable this two pupils. So click and hold and then drag this all the way to 1. And as you can see, the eye color changed. So I can change the right one from here and I can scroll down and change the left one, for example, to something a little different, like for example, blue, brown, green, whatever you want. So I can play around and have some fun, but I'm going to disable this because I want my character to only have one colored eyes like so. So I'm going to set this back to 0. Now you can also customize the eyebrows. So click on the eyebrows like so, and then change the color from here if you want. You can change the whites of the eyes as well. So if you click on eyes, you can change the different colors like so, if that's what you're looking for. I'm going to go back to eyebrows and set this to something like dark brown. Now we can customize this character even further. For example, give them big double pixelated eyes. So make sure you have the material icon selected. Again, make sure you're in solid mode. If you don't see this icon, make sure you're in solid mode because it's a lot trickier to see in the material preview. So make sure to go to solid mode and select this material icon right here. And once you select it, you can go back to the material preview and then keep playing around. What you can do is press on N and then go to item. And then under here, we have the properties section. So expand properties. And right here, we have a bunch of settings. So for example, if you want to import a skin with eyes, like so, I'm going to show you an example. So if you want to import a Woodplank skin with eyes, like so, I can click and then disable, for example, eyebrows, the eyes, and then the mouth. And now my character is going to be like a default Minecraft character with no facial expressions, if that's what you're looking for. So I can easily do that. But I'm going to click here and then choose Woodplank Eyeless from here, like so. And if you click and hold and drag everything down and then turn this on the left side, you can see I can disable the face or enable the face like so. You can also play around with the eye size. So if you click this, for example, you can move this up or down like so. If you have different types of characters, you can also move this up and down like so. Double pixelated eyes, 1.5 or just 1 pixel eyes. You can also expand this, move this up, move this down, and then just do whatever you want. You have a lot of customization options. You can also change the eyebrow size. For example, you can move the side by side, up and down, make them thicker, like so. For example, if I stay here, I can make this a lot thicker or thinner, like so. But if you want to change everything to normal, you can hover over the value and then press on backspace button. So backspace, backspace, backspace to reset everything to what they were before. And you can also take the face location and then move it up and down. What I like to do is go to eye size, go in the middle, and then type 1.5, and then go to face location, and then drag this down to something like 3.5, like so. And if you have like Alex or other female characters, you can enable the slim arm options. Just move this arrow on the right side, and that's pretty much it. And now your character is going to have slim arms. So that's a lot of customization. Again, if you want to find out more about this rig and more about my own Woodplank rig, the tutorials for them will be linked in the description. Now I want to go back to Steve because I want to use Steve for the rest of the tutorial. So I'm going to select this, go back to properties and reset everything to what they were before so that it looks more like Steve. Then go here, search for Steve. And now Steve's.png is going to be here. Click, and now it's going to be applied. And I'm going to use Steve for the rest of this animation. I can press on N to get rid of this menu because we no longer need this. And the last very, very important thing I want to tell you about the BPS Rig version 4 is out of the box, when you download the rig, it comes with a weird issue. So don't follow along for now, but if I select the character and then go to pose mode, which is what I'm going to teach you in a bit. If I select the head, for example, and I press on R, you can see this right side of the character's head is glitching in a weird way, which is going to look very weird when you render the animation. So to fix this issue, what I want to do is go back to object mode, make sure we are in the object mode from here. To make sure we have the character selected. Go to Assets, expand Steve in the outliner, and then expand the BPS character rig in the outliner as well. And what we need to customize is the last one, meshes, BPS Rig version 4 meshes. So expand this, and what we need to select is the mesh head. So if I scroll down, you can see we have mesh head right here, but if I click this, it's not selected. So what we need to do is make this selectable. And the way we can do that is hover over this filter icon, click on selectable, and now, once you have the selectable icon visible, make sure you have the BPS Rig version 4 mesh head selectable. Now you can go back to Viewport, get close to Steve, and now you can actually click somewhere over here, and then you can select the head like so. If you have the orange outline, it means it's selected. So now what you want to do is right click, and then click on Shade Flat. And that's it, the issue should be fixed. So I'm gonna click this and then make this deselectable again. I'm going to collapse this menu. I'm going to click on the filter icon and then disable the selectable because we no longer need this. I'm going to collapse this, and then collapse both of these collections. Now don't follow along, but if I again go to pose mode and then move around, you can see the issue no longer is there. It looks a lot better and there's no weird material glitch going on right here. So that's what I want you to keep in mind before you continue. Now it's time to continue. Let's go back to solid mode so that our scene runs a lot faster. So until this time, I showed you how to select the objects and just move them around using G, R, S, and that's it, right? But if you want to animate the characters, you're going to learn what's called a pose mode to select individual bones, which you see on this character. So to access pose mode, what you can do is go into object mode right here on top, and then switch this to pose mode. Make sure you first have your character selected, then go to object mode and switch this to pose mode. But again, if you want to be cool and if you want to be fast, you can click on Control Tab to access the pose mode or disable the pose mode. So Control Tab is a shortcut, which you're going to use most of the time very often. Another thing I want to do is go to this drop-down menu and then switch to flat shading so that the scene is a lot brighter and nicer to look at. Now, let me show you why pose mode is very important. So let's go back to pose mode, Control Tab. And now I can manipulate different bones of the character using the same navigation methods. So for example, we use G, R, and S for grab, rotate, and scale. And we could do the same thing inside the pose mode. So let's say I want to take my character's right arm and I want my character to raise the right arm. The way I can do that is stand like right over here and then press on R and then move my mouse on the left side. And that's pretty much it. If I want my character to raise an eyebrow, I can select one of the eyebrow controllers. For example, this controls the eyebrow. I can press on G and then Z, lock it on the Z axis and move it up. And as you can see, I'm using the same navigation methods. Now, if I want to make the head bigger and make it funny, I can press on S and then scale it up like so. Now it looks like a baby Steve. If I want to bend the arm, I can select the lower arm and then press on R and then bend it. So make sure you sit down and then break the rig and play around with it so that you learn a lot faster. So I can actually take the arm and then press on G and then move the shoulder outwards, or I can take the torso and then move it down. I can also, for example, control the mouth from here. If you select this bone, it controls the mouth. So if I move this down, it controls the opening or closing of the mouth. And if I press on R to rotate up or R to rotate down, I can make him happy or sad like so. And I can also select this bone. And if I press on G, I'm going to be able to control the positioning of the mouth like so. So I can position this here and then R to rotate here like so. Again, this looks weird, but I'm just showing you some examples. You can also take the eyes, play around with them. So for example, select the bottom of the eyes. This triangle controls the bottom of the eyes. I can press on S to scale and then move it up or down. S to scale, move it up, R to rotate. So basically you're using G, R, and S, grab, rotate, and scale here as well. So make sure you sit down and play around with this. I don't know what I just did. This looks very weird, but I'm just giving you some examples. So again, yeah, R to rotate, G to grab, S to scale, and that's pretty much it. Now, if you want to make everything go back to normal, what you can do is select one of the bones, for example, the torso. Now press on A, so it selects every single bone in your character. And now let's do Alt-R to clear every rotation, Alt-G to clear every location, and then Alt-S to clear every scale. And now the character is back to normal. So once you enter the pose mode, you have a lot of controls to animate the character. And when you learn the concepts of keyframes, it's going to be a lot easier to animate your characters. So you can pause the video and break your character, move this around like you want. But before you do that, let me show you a quick difference between animating the hands and animating the legs. So if I select the upper arm, I'm going to be able to press on R to rotate. And I can do the same thing for the lower arm like so. So I can move this using RR or RX, RY, whatever you want. But the lower arm is only locked on one axis. You cannot move this on like right or left. You can only move this up and down. But if I select, for example, the upper leg, and if I press on R, you can see nothing happens because the legs are automatically in IK, inverse kinematics. So I'm not going to go through detail, but arms have FK, which is forward kinematics, which means that you're going to need to animate like different bones separately. You're going to animate the shoulders and forearms separately, but legs have different controls. So if you select the upper or lower leg, you cannot rotate this. And you can press on G and then break this, but that's not really proper. So what you need to do is select these bottom bones, which have these arrows pointing out. For example, if I select one of the bones, if I click here, instead of pressing R, I can press on G. And now I'm going to be able to move the leg. And the main principle is that one bone controls the entire leg. So if I select this one bone, it controls the entire leg, including the thigh, including the calves, and so on. But in the arms, that's not really the case, but we can actually change it and customize it. So again, R to rotate for arms and G to grab for legs. And you can also rotate the legs using R, but if you want to move them, you can press on G and then move them on different axes, on GZ, GX, GY, RZ to rotate, RX to rotate, and so on, or double tap R to free rotate. If I want to return again, Alt R, Alt G, same thing here, Alt R, Alt G, and then Alt R, Alt G on everything to reset the positions of the character rig. Now, if you want to switch how these work, you don't have to, but I mostly use as it is on default. But if you want to switch, for example, the IK and then control them the same way you control the legs with one bone, then you can select one of the top bones of the arm, for example, this one, then press on N, and then make sure to go to item, and then make sure to expand properties. So remember, if you select the material, it's going to be different properties, but if you go to pose mode and select the hand, the upper hand, it's going to be different. So what you want to do is switch from FK to IK. So take this and drag this all the way to 1. And now if I take my character, you can see I'm no longer able to rotate. But if I select the square bone which just appeared, I can press on G and then control the arm the same way I would control the leg. And this is actually very useful in certain cases when you want your character to be held onto something. For example, you're doing like push-ups. It's very useful to do push-up animations with the IK or do other animations. Basically, whenever your character is climbing or holding something or holding the hand on the table and moving around, that's actually useful. But for most cases, I like to use FK on the arms like it's default and IK on the legs like it's on default. I'm going to select this and press on Alt-G, select the top bone, and then let's either drag this to 0, or you can actually type here 0 on the left click anywhere to confirm, and that's pretty much it. And we're back to default. So that was a brief overview of the BPS rig. If you download the Woodplank rig or any other Minecraft character rig, most of the controls are going to be the same. Maybe the look is going to be different, but yeah, you can take the arms and control them easily, take the head, take the legs, and then animate it and do whatever you want with it. And make sure to play around with this and come back to this video once you feel comfortable. Now, there might be cases when you're, for example, in the pose mode and animating and you accidentally press something and then now your character looks like this and you're not sure what to do. That's because you accidentally pressed on tab and you entered what's called an edit mode. And to easily fix that, you can actually go here and then go back to either pose mode or go back to edit mode and the issue should be fixed. Now I'm going to select everything, A, Alt R, Alt S, Alt G, and that's pretty much it. Now it's time to import the sword and attach it to the character's hand, and there are two main ways you can import the sword. One is you can import it directly inside the Blender using the MC Prep Addon, and another you can do file append using the Boxscape Studios Assets Pack, and I'm going to show you both methods. So first one we need to do is let's move the cursor like somewhere over here, shift right click so that we're going to be able to see the sword which is imported. Now press on N and then go to MC Prep Addon like so. Then scroll down, and you can actually collapse these menus, collapse world imports, collapse world tools, collapse skin spawner, and make sure you only leave the spawner enabled. So you can enable spawner from here. And then what we need to do is enable the item spawner. So expand this and then click on reload assets. Give it some time, and once it's reloaded, what you can do is either scroll down or look for all the assets, or if you want to find it easily, you can click on this drop-down menu and then search for sword. What I want to do is find a diamond sword. So I'm going to type sword, and now I have a different menu of different swords. I'm going to click on diamond sword, and then click on place. And if you hit place, it's going to place the diamond sword along this cursor. So I'm going to click here, and now it's going to import the diamond sword wherever my cursor is. And we have a diamond sword inside our scene. We can grab this, rotate this, scale this however we want using the same controls we learned before. Now let me show you another import method. So what I want to do is go to File, Append. Again, go to MC Structured Folders, go to Assets, then go to Cycles Minecraft Rig BSS Edit, click on it again. And then what we want to do is we have a bunch of files over here, but we need the Minecraft item rig. So you can either click this, or if you cannot find it, you can type item, and then open up Minecraft item rig.blend. Then go inside the objects folder, and then you're going to see a bunch of objects which you can import into your scene with double click. But I want to search for sword like so. Let's search for sword, and let's get the sword diamond right here. And now it's going to import, but not along the 3D cursor. So it's going to import along the world origin, like all the way down here. So again, if I click on Shift S right here, and then select the cursor, I'm going to be able to import the sword along the cursor like so. So these two swords are pretty much the same. The only difference is that the origin point is a bit above on the MC Prep, and it's like properly placed around the handle on the BSS asset pack. Now, I got a lot of questions in the last video about how to import the fire. So the way you can do that is actually go to File, Append, and then let's go back to the parent directory. So click this multiple times and make sure we're inside the Cycles Minecraft Rig BSS Edit. And if we check, you can see there's like fire, no image sequence written in capitals. Click this, go to Object, click on Fire, double click this. And now what you can do is click on Shift S, selection to cursor, and then click on GZ and move this up. And if I play, for example, if I press on spacebar and I play, you can see the fire is going to be imported. And now you can duplicate the fire multiple times into your scene. If you don't know how to duplicate objects, that's pretty easy. The first method is click on Shift D and then duplicate it and move it, for example, on X axis like so. Shift D, X, and then move it like so. But if you click on Shift D and duplicate objects many times, it's going to be heavy and Blender has to recalculate objects a lot of the times. So what you want to do is instead of Shift D, click on Alt D and then move this on the left side like so. Alt D moves on the left side and Blender doesn't have to recalculate everything and it's going to load in a lot faster. Now that's just a quick thing. We don't have to have fire in our scene, but I get a lot of questions about how to import fire. So there you go. That's how I import fire. It's going to be animated forever. Now I'm going to press on X and delete. Now I'm going to select the Boxcape Studio sword and then click on X and delete it. And last thing we need to do before we move on to lighting is take this sword and then parent it to the character's arm. Now I can either manually move this, G and then R and adjust it, or I can actually take the cursor and then move it inside the character's arm. So Shift right click and then click on Shift S and then select the cursor like so. Now you can adjust it using G and then R. So if you want to parent your sword to the character, it's pretty easy. If you want to attach something to another object in Blender, it's usually called parenting. So if you want to parent a sword, first make sure to go to pose mode and then click on Control Tab. And one issue you might come across is if you're in the Control Tab pose mode, I'm not going to be able to select sword or any other objects. That's actually a pretty good thing, but in some cases you might not want to use that feature. So what you can do is go to Edit and disable this lock object modes like this. So what we need to do is select the sword and then zoom in on this tiny arm bone, this plus shaped bone, Shift select this. And now what we need to do is click on Control P and then click on bone. And now it's going to be parented to the character's arm. So if I select this bone and then press on G or R to rotate, it's going to be moving around. And the great thing about this is that if I select the arm and then press on R to rotate and then move this around, move the body, it's going to be attached to the entire character because the hand follows the entire character like so. So that's how you parent the sword to the character. And now, lastly, on the segment, what we need to do is give our character a default standing pose. Like this looks very robotic. This looks default. So what we need to do is select the character, click on Control Tab, and then let's, for example, move the arms apart like this. And feel free to give the character any pose you want. I like to, for example, bend the arm slightly, move the hand forward, move the hand backwards like so. Take the legs, press on G and then Y to move them apart like so. Slightly rotate them, RZ. And then select the body, pelvis, GZ, and then slightly move it down. Maybe select this, RZ, move it on the right side, RY to move it down slightly. And I'm going to explain more movement options and pose mode settings in animation chapter. So don't worry about it for now. Use the tools which you already know right now. And we give the character like some default natural pose like so. We can change the facial expressions later on. We're not going to go through them at the moment. So the segment is done. Now we're ready to move on to the lighting. Feel free to take a rest and come back to this video whenever you want. Well done on following along so far. You're doing a pretty good job. And feel free to continue whenever you want. I know this might be overwhelming if you're a beginner, so feel free to take a break and then practice with all the basics you learn and then come back to this video. Or if you're ready, let's continue right now. So now it's time to do lighting, compositing, and making your scene look a lot prettier. So what we need to do is first import a camera right here. And a cool trick which you could do is, since you already know you have a camera in Blender, by expanding this and then clicking camera, I can go down and see my camera right here near the world origin. Now I can either press G and then move this out manually, but what I can do is go in front of the character and let's take a position which we like. So I'm going to press Shift F, and then let's imagine like I am inside the camera view. And let's say I like this view right here. What I can do is press Control, Alt, and then number pad 0. And now it's going to snap the camera to my view. And if I click on the middle mouse and then go out, you can see I have my camera right here. Again, if you don't have a numpad, what you can do is click on Shift, right click, and move the cursor here. And the Shift S, selection the cursor, and then move the camera and adjust it right here. I can press GZ, and then RZ to rotate it backwards like this. And then RR to make it face the character. Additionally, I can press on numpad 0, or I can press this camera icon, and I can press a Shift F, R to rotate, G for grab, and then adjust the camera to my liking. Now let's leave the camera right here and then go out of the camera mode. And before we adjust more settings with the camera, let's import a sky and give our scene a bright cinematic look. So in Blender, there are multiple ways to light your scene. First one is using the sky texture, built in Blender sky texture. And the second is using HDRI image, which basically wraps the sky and lighting around your scene like so on 360 degrees. So first I'm going to teach you how to use a sky texture in case that's something you want. So what I'm going to do is go back like here, where I'm able to see the sky. And first I'm going to select this gold block because I don't need the gold blocks. I'm going to press an X and delete them because we don't need to see them. Now, what you can do is go to rendered view, or if your scene is too laggy, make sure to go to material view and then enable scene lights and scene world. But for this tutorial, I'm going to go to the rendered view and then explain everything from the rendered view. So I'm going to click on this rendered properties and then enable denoise in the viewport so that the scene looks a lot cleaner. So click on denoise and it's going to help scene look a lot prettier. Now, what we need to do is go inside this world properties, this red circle icon. And now on the surface, we need to click on this dot on the color. And then we have a bunch of settings over here. You can ignore most of them. And what we need to do is choose sky texture. If I click on sky textures, as you can see, my scene is going to become a lot brighter. So what we can change is strength of the sun, the elevation of the sun, and the rotation of the sun. So those main three settings are what you should keep in mind. So let's first change the sun rotation. Let's say I want to take the sun and hit the character from here. So I can take the sun rotation and then drag this on the left side or on the right side. And if I move this on the right side, like so, you can see the character's shadow is going to be behind it, just like the trees and all the other stuff. Now, what I also recommend you to do is while you're working on the lighting, make sure to go to map and then re-enable the vegetation because it's going to give a more accurate representation of what your lighting is going to look. So click on vegetation, and now you can see all the shadows of the trees and grass and all the beautiful stuff. So I can move closer to Steve and then adjust the sun rotation like so. And apart from sun rotation, you can also play around elevation. So you can either make a morning, midday, or night scene. So if I turn this down, you can see it's going to become darker. And I'm going to enter the night scene. If I move this up, this is going to become a lot brighter. I'm going to get like shorter shadows, but more brightness inside the scene. Something like this. And as you can see, it looks beautiful and cinematic. If I click on numpad 0 and go to camera view, I can actually click on this button, which means show overlays. I can toggle these off, which means I'm not going to be able to see all the bones and outline selections like so. Now, I think this is too much. So what I can do is decrease the sun intensity. So if I click this, I can decrease the strength of the sun. And now I'm going to have more contrast and less brightness. I can also go to strength and then turn this down slightly, like so. And as you can see, using the sky texture, with a few clicks, we can get some pretty cool lighting. But for the rest of this episode, I want to use the HDRI Sky method. So what we can do is if you want to disable this, you can actually keep this and then play around. But if you don't want to, you can click on this X button and then disable the sky texture, and then everything turns dark apart from the portal, which has the emission material and it lights up the scene. So click on New. And now what we need to do is click on this color. And then instead of the sky texture, we want to change it to environment texture. Now everything is going to turn pink for now, but don't worry about it. So what we need to do is click on open. and then open the HDR Skies. If you downloaded my MC structured folders, if you go inside it and click on HDRI, you're going to have HDR Skies here. So HDRI stands for High Dynamic Range Image, which means that it's a very high resolution sky image, which you can take and wrap around your Blender scene. And let me explain what this does. So if I click on open, then I can go to MC structured folders, click on this again, go to HDRI, and now I can view the different skies I have inside the folder. But if I want to preview the thumbnails, I can click on this button, and now it's going to show me the thumbnails. So let's say I want to import one of these skies. I like this one, for example, so I can double click on this, and then import it in the scene. And as you can see, the HDR Sky is applied to our scene beautifully. Now, if you want to increase the strength, you can go here and then increase the world strength to something like 4, for example. And it's going to make the scene a lot brighter. And additionally, the HDR Sky has its own lighting, but what we need to do is also create a sunlight to give our characters and objects shadows. If you create a sky texture already has a built-in sun, but HDRI Sky doesn't have a built-in sun. So what we need to do is let's go back to the solid mode. And actually what I want to do is split the screen. So right here, I'm going to have rendered view, and on the left screen, I'm going to have my workspace. So the way you can do that is hover over here until you see these 2 arrows, then right click, and then click on vertical split. And let's split the screen somewhere in the middle. So left click to confirm. Now, let's go back to the camera view here. So on this screen, I'm going to click on numpad 0, enter the camera view, and on the screen, I'm going to keep working. So what I want to do is make sure you disable the overlays here. You can enable the overlays here like so. And then let's go to rendered view right here. Now what we want to do is create a sunlight. So if you remember in the first segment, I told you when you click on Shift A, what you want to keep in mind is mesh, camera, and then light. So let's go to light. And then as you can see, we have 4 main light sources. We have point, sun, spotlight, and area light. Now they do have different functions and different scenes, but if you want to light up the environment and the outside scene, I highly recommend you use the sunlight. So let's click on the sunlight, and it's going to spawn wherever we have the 3D cursor. Now, if I move the sun, it's not going to affect anything. What we want to do is change the rotation of the sun, because the angle of the sun matters a lot. So if I press on R and then move this towards the character, move this line towards Steve, for example, R, as you can see, Steve is going to become a lot brighter, and we're going to get some shadows. Now, you can also change the strength of the sun. If you want to make it stronger, you can go here, click on the sun settings, click on strength, and let's turn this up to something like 5. And as you can see, I'm going to create like really bright, beautiful midday scene. You can also take the sun and change the color slightly. Don't go like crazy, something like this. But if you give it like a bright orange look, it's going to give like the illusion of the bright afternoon sun. Now, as you can see, we have one problem. Some of the grass textures are not loading properly, and that's because of the settings called the transparency. So let me show you how to quickly fix that so we can move along. So go to the render properties, and then scroll down, and then enable the light paths right here. Once you enable light paths, we have transparent settings here, which by default is set to 8. You can click this and then set this to something like 16. And now, as you can see, it fixed the issue and the grass no longer looks weird. If 16 is enough, then feel free to do 32, 64, or above. But for now, 16 is enough. Remember, the higher you go, the more render times it's going to be, the heavier it's going to be on your scene. But for now, it was enough. So that's how you fix the issue. So now we can continue the lighting. So let's readjust the sun position to however you want. I'm going to double tap R and then find the rotation that I'm happy with. So maybe something like this should look good. Now, if I go outside my camera view, you can see I have this HDR sky. And then if I rotate around the scene, you can see I have clouds and a beautiful day sky. But let's say I want to customize this further. Let's say I want to take this cloud, the sun, which is like creeping from the clouds, and then move it like on the opposite side. The way you can do that is using the world node properties. So let me show you how to do that. Now, I'm actually going to go back to material properties and enable scene lights and scene world so you can see a lot better. And it's a lot smoother. Now, on this view, what I want to do is hover over the top, click on my middle mouse, and then drag this on the left side so that I'm going to be able to see this button right here. Then click on this button, and then click on the shader editor, or the shortcut is S. So if I press on S, I'm going to be able to enter the shader editor, which is going to allow us to work with nodes and then create different stuff. So what I want to do is press on N to get rid of this menu because we don't need this. And instead of object nodes, I want to click on object and set this to world nodes, like so. Now you can see we have background, the image texture, and the world output. And this is pretty much the same thing as if we go here. As you can see, we have the world texture, which is like this one, the image texture. We have the strength, which is the same as here. And then the output is what we see in the scene, in the final result. So if I change the strength from here, it's going to change the strength from here as well. So it's pretty much the same thing. Now what we want to do is control the image texture and then rotate, scale, or move however we want. So what we need to do is, again, if you remember in the first segment, we enabled the Node Wrangler. If you haven't enabled the Node Wrangler add-on, to go to Edit, Preferences, click on Add-ons, and then search for Node Wrangler, and make sure Node Wrangler add-on is enabled. Once it is enabled, then make sure to select this image. So if you select this texture, the node, you can press on G to move it, right-click to release it, or G to move it, and left-click to confirm. So once you select this, press on Ctrl-T, and now you can see we created two new nodes. We have texture coordinate and we have mapping. Now mapping is going to allow us to rotate the sky however we want. So let's say if I want to take the sun and then move it here, what I can do is go to Z rotation, ignore location, ignore scale. You don't have to change them. Go to rotation and then under Z, left click and drag this either right or left. And now you can see I'm able to move my sky however I want. This is also going to affect the lighting. So if I want, for example, the sun to be shining from here, from this side, right? I'm going to be able to move the sun on the right side. So I'm going to take this and then move this on the right side to imagine that the sun is shining right around here. But you don't have to do this in the actual animation because some people might not notice that you have the HDRI Sky here and Blender sun right here. But if you match it, it's going to look a lot better. It's going to look more proper. So maybe like place it somewhere over this corner. And that's pretty much it. That's how you customize an HDRI Sky. If I want to go back to the 3D view, I can click here and then go back to the 3D viewport. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go back to the camera view here. And I'm going to go back to the rendered view. And now that we have imported the HDRI Sky, imported the sun, now it's time to adjust some camera settings because it's very important too. So what we need to do is select the camera. So you can either select the camera from here, or while you're inside the camera view, you can actually select this outline, and it's also going to select the camera, and you will be able to move it around. Once you have your camera selected, what you can do is pay attention to the side. We can actually go to the camera properties, object data properties, and first thing we can change is the focal length. So if you take this and then move this forward, you're going to get the close-up. If you move this backward, you're going to get a wide shot. For something like this, we need like 55, for example, because it's going to look good. We can also go up to 70, for example, and it's going to look good. If you're doing wide shot with lots of crowds and lots of characters, you can crank down the focal length and adjust it the way you want. Another very important setting is that when you're animating, you don't have to see everything that is outside the camera. It's going to make your scene run faster, and also it's going to be better for your eyes so that you're not confused. So what you can do is under Viewport Display, make sure in the camera properties, click on Viewport Display, scroll down, and then expand this opacity all the way to 1. So I can take this and drag this on the right side, and now I can see everything becomes black other than what I see inside the camera, which is exactly what we want. So if we move the camera, I'm only going to be able to see what's inside the camera. Another thing we can enable is the thirds, the guiding lines, the rule of thirds to get a better composition. So what we can do is scroll down under composition guides. You can check thirds, but we don't see anything because we toggled overlays off. But if I toggle overlays on, you can see I get these guiding lines, which are pretty cool and which help me to adjust the character's position better. If you want to learn more about composition and rule of thirds, I'm going to leave some tutorials in the description so you can check them out. But since this is a beginner tutorial, I don't want to overwhelm you with all the fancy terminology and fancy stuff. So I can keep this enabled. I'm going to toggle overlays off right now. And I'm going to toggle overlays on this scene right here. Also, if you're working on a large scene and you don't see the background, that might be because of your clipping distance. So if you remember, we changed the clipping distance from view and made this 10,000. You can also do the same thing for the camera. So if you scroll up, you can see we have the clipping distance. Right now, I don't have to change it because I see everything in the scene. But if something like cuts off in the scene, you can change this and set this to something like 10,000, and that should be fine. But I'm going to keep this at 1,000 for now because I see everything inside the scene. So that's pretty much it. We have focal length setting, clipping distance, rule of thirds, and pass part 2. Those are the main settings you should keep in mind right now. And later on, we're going to touch on the depth of field and aperture, but we don't have to do anything with it for now. And we're going to return to this later on in the animation chapter. Now that we have our camera set up, our lighting imported, our character in the place, we need to render the image. Basically, we need to take this camera and ask it to take a picture of the scene, and then we can save this picture, or we can either save multiple pictures and then create an animation together with that. First, let's take a picture. The way you can do that is you can go to rendered and then click on render image, or click on F12 if it's a shortcut. And then click on render image, and now it's going to start rendering the image. It's going to take a few moments. For some of you, it might be a few seconds. For some of you, it might be a few minutes, depending on the PC you have and depending on the sampling you have set. For me, I have 50 samples set. As you remember from the first segment, I set samples to 50 and resolution is 1920 by 1080. So if I go back to here, if I scroll up, you can see we have 50 samples. On the render, denoising is enabled. And if I go back to the rendered view, you can see it took like 25 seconds for me to render. Now, what I recommend you to do is go back to the render properties. And then under denoising, make sure you have denoising checked for the rendered result. Expand the denoising, and you can scroll down And first of all, if you're using like a GTX card, you can use OpenImage denoise. But if you have an RTX GPU, you can click this and click on optics. And after I switch to optics, I like to set this to none. So I'm going to select this and set this to none. And in my case, the results look a lot better. But if you're using OpenImage denoise, make sure you use GPU for faster rendering and faster denoising as well. I'm going to switch this to optics for now. And if you want to see the rendered result, you can actually go to the rendering tab right here. Right now we're in the layout, but if I go to the rendering workspace, you can see I'm in the rendering of workspace here. Or another thing we can do is press an F11, and that's going to give me a better view of the rendered result. And now let me talk about the slots. So whenever you're working on your animations and lighting and then checking your progress, what you need to do is use slots. So for example, this is my first draft of the scene. And let's say I add the other effects, lights, and import different characters. What I want to do is go to slot 2, for example, and then render the scene again, because I'm going to be able to compare the scenes with each other. So let me show you an actual example. Let's say I decided to create a cube like so, like randomize this cube. And then also, let's say I decided to import something with MC Prep. So let's say I imported a pickaxe. And let's say I want to move this pickaxe in front of this cube. And let's say I want to check a progression of my scene. Like, you don't have to follow along with this. What I want to do is press on F11 and then go to slot 2. Make sure to go from slot 1 to slot 2. Or additionally, I can use the numbers on my keyboard. So if I click here and then click 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to be able to switch between different slots. You have 8 slots maximum, which you can check from here. So let's say I'm going to click here and then click on 2 to go to slot 2. And then I'm going to press on F12. And now it's going to render the scene on slot 2. So now if I go back to slot 1 and slot 2, you can see the scene looks different, and I'm going to be able to check the progress of my scene using slot 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But I'm just going to take the cube and the pickaxe and delete them because I don't need that. One more tiny life hack I want to show you is whenever you delete a bunch of objects in Blender, there's still some data left of these objects. So what you want to do is go to File, Clean Up, click on Purge Unused Data, and then click on this. Click on Delete. And now it's going to delete everything, and it's going to reduce your Blender file size and make everything easier, basically. So now let's continue our progression. Now what we want to do is play around with the view transform. So let's go to rendering, where we're going to see the rendered result. Let's go to slot 1, because we don't need slot 2. It looks ridiculous. So let's go to slot 1. And what we need to do is go back to the rendered properties right here, and then scroll down all the way under color management and expand color management. And if I scroll down, I have the view transforms right here. So I have a bunch of options. If I click this, you can see we have AGX, Fiddlemate, Chronos, Aces, whatever, right? So I recommend you sit down for a few minutes and play around with them. I mostly use standard for Minecraft animations. As you can see, if I use standard, it's going to give like more pop, more contrast. It looks more cartoony, and I like the way it looks. But you can also use Aces 1.3 and 2.0, which are new additions to Blender 5. They weren't added previously. So you can try these, for example, more contrasty look. You can use Chronos PBR neutral as well. You can try AGX. Or try the old Filmic. So I like to set this to standard, but feel free to play around. An additional thing you can do is once you set this to standard or any other look you want, you can play around with the look, aka the contrast. So I click here, I can actually increase the contrast. Right now it sets to none. And none and medium contrast are basically the same. So if I click on medium contrast, nothing changes. But if I click on, for example, high contrast, you can see it's going to look a lot different. I think it's a bit way too much, so I like to keep this at medium high contrast or medium contrast. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to keep it at default, which is none, and then standard. Additionally, you can play with the exposure and play with the gamma, but I like to leave this by default. So again, go to color management, choose your desired one. For me, it's standard, none, and then leave everything by default. Again, you have more advanced settings like the curves and the white balance, but you don't have to touch these for now. I usually leave these at default. But if you want to have more customization, have more contrast, have more balance in your scene, remove the whites, add more contrast, then you can use the curves and the white balance features. But I'm just going to leave everything by default for now. So once we got this out of the way, it's time to make the leaves and the grass look a lot better. By default, they look pretty decent, but what I want to do is go back to layout. And let me show you a few things. First, when the light hits the vegetation, for example, the grass, it's supposed to shine through. The grass is not supposed to block it. So for that, we need to add the translucency. And for the leaves, we also need to add translucency. But what we also need to do is, let's say I'm looking at this leaf. And as you can see, the face which is away from us, like this face, is visible. But it should not be visible if you have like fancy Minecraft settings turned on. So we need to replicate a fancy Minecraft look to make this look a lot prettier and brighter. So let me show you how to fix that. I'm going to show you how to fix this using the Mineways world, but I think you can apply the same things using JMC to OBJ world as well. So first thing we need to do is select the grass. So I'm going to select the grass, which is this one. And then I'm going to click here and then switch this to shader editor. Now, we were previously in the world tab, but we no longer need the world tab because we already adjusted the HDR Sky the way we want. So I'm going to click on the object, and now we need to work with the nodes. So by default, the object is going to have the texture and the principled node. Now, if you want to select the nodes, you can left click them or drag select them and G to move them around and whatever. So what we need to do is go on the right side. Again, if you want to move it around, it's the same thing. Zoom in and out using your scroll wheel, click on the middle mouse and then drag it on right or left to move it around. So let's move on the right side. Let's take this material output node and then press G to move it on the right side because we need some space right here. So what we need to do is create a new node. Again, if you want to create something in Blender, you do Shift A. So Shift A, and then let's search for translucency. So make sure you have translucent BSDF and then place it right around here. And now what we need to do is search for Shift A, click on Add Shader, and then let's place the Add Shader right here. So if you drag and drop this between these two nodes, you can see the line becomes white. And as soon as the line becomes white, you can actually left click. Now it's going to automatically drag and drop this node between these two new nodes and it's going to connect. So now what we need to do is take this green slot, BSDF of the translucent, click and hold your mouse, and then drag this in the green slot of the Add Shader. And now you can see everything is going to become white. It's going to turn crazy, but don't worry about it. What we need to do is I'm just going to free up some space right here. So I need to take the color slot and then move this into color slot of the translucent. Take the yellow spot, take the color, and drag and drop this inside the color of the translucent. And now you can see the grass looks a lot brighter and more lively. So to show you a difference, I'm going to select the Add Shader, then I'm going to shift select the translucent. So now I can actually press on M to mute the node, and it's going to disregard all the effects the node makes. So I'm going to press on M, and you can see without the translucency, it looks dark. It still looks good, but not good enough. So if I press on M and Unhide, you can see it looks a lot brighter. And we can do the same thing for the ferns. So we can select the ferns, but first let's toggle overlays on, select the ferns, and let's do the same thing to practice. So move this on the right side, click on Shift A, add an Add Shader, drag and drop this between these two nodes, then add a translucency shader, take this, and then drop this like so. Then take the image output, and then plug this into the color of the translucent, and that's pretty much it. You can see it looks a lot brighter. Now let's do the same thing for the leaves. So let's select the leaves, and then let's go to the material output, click on Shift A, add shader, like so, translucency, drag and drop this, like so, and then connect the color to the color, like so, readjust the nodes, and as you can see, it looks a lot brighter. Now, we can go ahead and adjust everything else in the scene. We might have different grass, we have different flowers, different wood. For example, we have birch, but the problem is that the birch is not going to be visible in the camera. So we don't have to bother with adjusting the birch. So you can work with everything, but you don't have to because you only should work on what's going to be visible inside the camera to save time and save performance. So now since we adjusted the oaks, what we can do is press on H to hide them, also hide the grass and then hide the ferns. And let's see everything else we need to adjust from the camera view. So for example, we have these leaves right here. These are the jungle leaves. And let's do the same thing for the jungle leaves. So I'm going to go here. Let's do Shift A, add shader, drag and drop this. Let's do translucency, Shift A, translucent. Drop this here. And then plug the color into the color. And now that it's fixed, I can hide this. And let's see everything else. We only need to adjust the vines, I guess, and not anything else. So what you can do is select the vines and then add translucency to the vines as well. So Shift A, add shader, drop this here, Shift A, translucency, place it here, green into green, yellow goes into yellow, like always. And now it's going to be a lot brighter. H to hide this, and that's pretty much it. Whatever we have inside the camera has already been fixed. Whatever we have outside the camera, we don't care about. So let's leave it as it is. Now press on Alt-H to Alt-Unhide everything. And now you can see we have bright and lively grass and leaves. So what we can do is press on F11. And now let's go to slot 3. And then press on F12 to render the slot 3 and compare it to slot 1. So that's the render result. Now let's go back to slot 1. You can see it looks decent, but if we go to slot 2, we have this crazy result. And let's go to slot 3, and we fix the grass and the leaves. So yeah, that's the main difference between slot 1 and slot 2, and that's why working with slots is good. Now, I'm going to also add the backface culling to the leaves. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So let's go to slot 4, click on escape, and let's work with the leaves. So select the oak leaves again. And what we want to do is drag select these, so you can left click, drag and select these nodes and press on G to move them out like so. Now what we need to do is add 3 new nodes. First thing we need to do is Shift A and then click on Mix Shader and then drag and drop the Mix Shader between Principled BSDF and between Add Shader, like so. Now what we need to do is press on Shift A and then search for Transparent, not Translucent, but Transparent BSDF. Take this and then move this at the bottom somewhere over here. Now connect the green into the green of the shader, the second slot, like so. And now what we need to do is click on Shift A and then search for Geometry. And this is going to allow us to remove the faces which are looking away from us. And now what we need to do is select the back facing and then connect it to the factor. And to show you what this does is I'm going to go actually out of the camera view and move closer to the leaves. And then if I look at the face, for example, which is looking away from us, I'm going to switch back to the material view so that I see the results a lot better, like so. And now you can see we see the face which is looking away from us, this one. But if I take back facing and then connect this into the factor, you can see it disappears and I no longer see the face which is looking away from us. So yeah, this is actually how it's supposed to look in the fancy graphics. The face which is like outside our view should not be visible. But if I go to the top, it's going to become visible like so, this one. But if I go to the bottom, it should not be visible like so. Now let's do the same thing for the jungle leaves. So I'm going to hide the oak leaves for now and do the same thing for the jungle leaves. And we don't care about anything else that is outside the camera view. So again, select everything, move it on the right side, Shift A, let's search for Mix Shader, drop this here, then search for Transparent, move this here, and I'm actually going to move closer to the jungle leaf so you can see what these nodes do in a better way. So I'm going to be looking at here, then connect the Transparent here, and then let's search for Shift A, Geometry, move this on the top, and connect gray into the gray. Again, select the back facing, connect this into factor, and that's pretty much it. The faces which are looking away from us are no longer visible. Now let's render it to slot 4 and let's see the difference. I'm going to press on Alt-H to unhide the oak leaves, then press on F11, go to slot 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 using your numbers on the keyboard or using this drop-down menu, and then press on F12 to render. And the rendering is finished. It took 21 seconds. So let's go back to slot 1. This is what we had before. Then this is what we had with Translucency. And now this is what we have with Backface Culling. As you can see, if we compare to slot 1 and slot 4, this looks a lot better. This scene like was very dark here and here. But if you go to slot 4, everything else looks a lot better and more lively. And it actually looks like you have fancy and high quality settings turned on in the Minecraft game. Now let's go back to our view and it's time to work on the compositing. So we're going to do some basic compositing. I'm not going to overwhelm you with a lot of details. We're going to add some glow. We're going to add some vignette, add some lens distortion, and then we're going to move on to animation. So if you're excited, let's continue. So for the compositing, what we need to do is click on this compositing tab. First, before we move on, make sure to click on Ctrl S to save the scene. Once the scene is saved, let's go to compositing. And in the Blender 4.0 and below, you used to click here and then check to use nodes. But in Blender 5, you can just click on new. And now you're going to be able to create new nodes for the compositing. So before you do any node magic, what we need to do is learn how to navigate. So if you want to zoom in on the image, you can press on Alt-V. Alt-V zooms in on the image. And then V zooms out on the image. Additionally, you can go to View. And then you can go to Move. And then move the image. So if I click this, I can press on Move and then left click to confirm. If I want to frame the entire image properly, I can press on Fit. Now it's going to fit the image and show me the entire image like this. If I want to zoom in and out, I can also use this instead of V and Alt-V. And I can also change the offset of the image like so. But I'm just going to reset them using backspace like so. And I'm going to do V to zoom out a little bit. So that's it about the navigation. Now, what we need to do is play around with these nodes. So I have a group output, which is what we're going to see in the final result. And we have viewer, which is what we see right now as we make changes. And then we have the render layers, which we're going to take and then add some effects to, and then feed it into the group output. So select this and then move this on the left side so we have some space for new nodes. So first node I like to add is the glare node, which is going to allow us to add some glow to the scene. So the way we can create new nodes, again, is press on Shift A, search, and then let's search for glare. Search for glare, and then drag and drop this. Again, when the node becomes white, you can drag and drop this, and it's going to be automatically connected. Now, if you notice, Steve's eyes became a lot brighter because we have like streaks selected. But what I like to do is set this from streaks to blue. So if I select the streaks, I can set this to blue, and that's going to create a nice looking glow on the scene. If you want to change the quality, you can click here and then set this to high quality. And what you can also adjust is the strength. So you can turn this down and turn this up. You can set the saturation and change the color of the glow. but I like to leave this at default. And what I like to play around with is the highlights. So I'm going to expand highlights. And then if you turn down the threshold, the lower your threshold is, the stronger your glow is. So I'm going to turn this down. As you can see, it becomes a lot brighter. But don't go overboard with the threshold because it's going to look weird. So maybe I should take this and move this to something like 0.7. And that looks pretty decent. Maybe to 0.8. Now, if you want to move around your image, you can press on Alt, press on middle mouse, hold on middle mouse, and now you can move around like this. So I like to leave most of these settings by default and play around with the threshold. So be sure to play around with glare. But for now, I'm going to only affect the highlights and then leave everything by default and collapse them to stay organized like so. So what glare node does is basically it takes the brightest part of your scene. Like for example, you have a torch and a glowstone, especially if you have a nighttime scene. It's pretty good to use a glare node because it's going to enhance and make the bright parts a lot brighter. So it's very good to use, for example, for torches, lanterns, or if you have character with glowing eyes, or for things like that. But it's also useful to make the outside scenes a lot brighter. Now, what we need to do after the glare node is create a lens distortion node. Right now, we're inside a digital camera and we need to fake it and we need to make it look like an actual real life camera. And in the actual real life camera, the corners are a little bit stretched. So the way we can do that in Blender is we can click on Shift A and then search for the lens distortion node. If I drag and drop the lens distortion between these two nodes, it's going to be connected properly. So what we can do is first click on Fit and then we can select the dispersion. If I expand this, I'm going to be able to read this properly. If I click on dispersion, I can click this and then type 0.01. 0.01. And now it's going to create like a tiny stretchy effect. So you can see the corners, if I click on mute, the corners look very sharp, very digital. But if I click on M, this gives like a little bit of illusion of a real life camera. Now, after the lens distortion, what we want to do is select these, including this dot, and then press on G to move this on the right side like so. And I like to darken the corners a bit, which is called a vignette and which is one of the cinematic effects. Now, in the past, I used to do vignette separately using the ellipse mask and the blur node, but Blender 5 actually provides a very good vignette node preset. So if I select this one, the third one from the list, click on all and then go to third one, vignette, take this and then drag and drop this here. So now I can take this vignette preset and drag and drop this between. And now you can see the corners darken. But obviously that's way too much. So what I can do is press on feather and then make this a lot softer like so. So 0.9 should be enough. Again, if I take this and mute this, you can see this is the before and this is the after. Now I still think that's a lot darker. So instead of 0.8, I can actually take this and then stretch the corners out even more to make the vignette look a lot smaller. So I'm going to do something like 0.9, which should be enough, like so. And then if I click on before and after, M to mute, M to unmute, you can see it looks different and looks more cinematic like so. Now, if you want to see the entire before after, let's select glare, lens distortion, and vignette. Press on M, and this is the before, and this is the after. As you can see, this looks more cinematic. And now we are ready to move on. So last note we're going to do is the vector blur. So whenever we're making animations, we need to add some motion blur so that it looks more cinematic and doesn't look digital. So what we need to do is press on Shift A, and then click on vector blur. Let's search for vector blur. And then when you create this node, make sure to drag and drop this between glare and lens distortion so that it works more properly. Now you can drag and drop this last, it's still going to work, but it's going to work more properly and it's going to be more physically accurate if you drag and drop this between glare and lens distortion. So drag and drop this like so. And now what we need to do is let's go outside of compositing for now and let's go to the third properties, which is the view layer. Click on the view layer and then under passes and under data, what we need to do is enable depth and then we also need to enable vector. So make sure depth and vector are checked. And as you can see, if I enable vector and depth, they're also going to appear here, depth and the vector. Now, once you create a vector blur, what we need to do is remember the same color go inside the same color. So take the vector, which is purple, and then connect this into the purple, which is speed, like so. Then take the depth and then connect this into the Z. And that's pretty much it. Right now, you're not going to see any difference because we don't have any animation or movement. But what I recommend you to do is set the samples to something like 128 for more accurate results. And the shutter can be 0.5. 0.5 is a pretty good motion blur level. So I like to leave this at 0.5 or 0.7 depending on what I'm looking for. So that's it. 128 samples, 0.5. Let's leave this on right now. And we're going to see what this does in the animation chapter. And lastly, what we can do is go back to layout. And since Blender 4, we have real-time compositing. So make sure we are inside the camera view. We don't need to work with nodes anymore. So I'm going to click here, go back to 3D viewport. And what we need to do is go to render. And if you want to see the compositing effects which we just applied, you can toggle overlays off. Then make sure you're in the render view. Then click on this drop-down menu and then click on camera. And once I click on camera, I'm going to be able to see all the compositing effects which I just did to my character, which is pretty dope. You can also go outside the camera view, and if you want to see the compositing effects right here, you can click this and click on always. And you can see we have vignette, we have the glare, and we have the chromatic aberration applied too. But we don't have to do that. We only need to enable this for the camera. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm starting to like the way the scene looks. Again, if you want to play around, feel free to go back to the sound settings, adjust the sound strength, change the HDRI if you're not happy with it, change the compositing settings. But for now, I'm going to leave everything as it is because I'm pretty happy with how it looks. And now we're ready to move on to the animations. So congratulations for finishing this episode. Well done on following along so far. I know it's a long tutorial. It's not easy to follow along, especially if it's your first time starting out. But give yourself a pat on the back. Feel free to take a break and then come back to this video whenever you want. And now, if you're ready, let's move on to the animation episode where we're going to finally start animating. So let's do that. Alright, now it's time to start the most exciting part, which is animation. But before we jump into character animation, we're going to cover some basics. If you already know the basics of animation, then feel free to skip to this part of the video. But if not, then feel free to follow along. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to solid view right here. Keep the camera right so. And then I'm going to hide everything. So I'm just going to hide this. You can open a new Blender file, but if you want to follow along, then feel free to follow along what I do. So let's hide all of these by dragging down. Then right click, let's create a new collection, and let's name this Animation Practice. Make sure to click on this collection so whatever I create is going to be here. Then I want to move the cursor to the world origin because I want to explain different animation concepts on the world origin. So I'm going to click on Shift C, and Shift C moves the cursor to the world origin. What I also want to do is make the screen full and then make the screen disappear. So what I can do is right click and then click on Join Left. If I click on Join Left, the screens are going to be joined. Now I can toggle overlays on again, go outside the camera view, and let's go back to the world origin like so. Again, if you don't want to fiddle with all of that, if you don't want to do any of this, then feel free to open up a new Blender file. You can just open up a new Blender file and start fresh from there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a cube and explain different animation concepts which are important to grasp. So I click on Shift A, click on the mesh, cube, press on F to frame it. And I'm also going to click on this drop down menu. And for now, let's go to Studio because it doesn't need to be that bright. So first thing we need to do is go to the output properties. And if you remember in the first segment, we set the frame rate to 30 FPS. This means that each second is going to cover 30 frames. So if the timeline playhead goes from 0 to 30, it means it's going to cover 1 second. Then for 30 to 60, it's going to cover 2 seconds, then 3 seconds until 90, 4 until 120, and so on. You get the ideas. That's basically 30 FPS. Now, while we're animating, we're going to work a lot with the timeline and with the dope sheet, and I'm going to tell you what those are. So timeline is what you see right now, and let me show you how you can use the timeline. So basically, if you want to expand this, you can take this and expand it like so. If you want to zoom in on this timeline, you can use a scroll wheel to zoom in and scroll wheel to zoom out. If you click and hold on your scroll wheel, you can move this on the right or on the left side like so. And this blue thing is called either the timeline playhead or the timeline cursor. If you want to move it, you can take this and then drag this either on the right side or on the left side. If you, for example, want to move it right here, you cannot move it by touching like this gray area. You have to click on this black line. So hover over this black edge right here where the numbers are and then click somewhere to move this timeline playhead like so. Additionally, you can use the arrows on your keyboard. So you can use the right arrow to move on the right side, left arrow to move on the left side, and you can use up and down arrows to jump between the keyframes. But right now we don't have any keyframes, and I'm going to show what these do while we get some keyframes. One more thing I highly recommend you to do is go to playback, go up in the sync, and then change this from play every frame to frame dropping. This is going to tell Blender to drop some frames, and it's going to play animation a lot smoother, a lot faster, especially when you have a lot of characters and a lot of scenes. Now it's going to be a bit jittery, but it's going to be a lot faster than play every frame. So make sure you tell Blender to drop some frames and play animation as smoothly as possible. And additional information about the timeline is that this is the start frame, this is the end frame. So let's say I want to make my animation only 3 seconds long. What I can do is either calculate via frames, or I can hover over the timeline and then press on Control T. If I press on Control T, it's going to convert everything into seconds. Or you can also go to View and then enable Use Timecode, and that's going to do the same thing. Now, if I use Control T, you can see that 3 seconds is right here. So I'm going to hover over 3 seconds. As you can see, it's 90 frames. Now, there are a few ways I can set the end frame to 90. One thing is I can hover over this, click on End, and then type 90, press on Enter to confirm. Another thing you can do is hover over the current frame. Just press on Control C, and then hover over the end and press on Control V. That's it. But my favorite way is to set an end frame, is I can hover over the timeline playhead like this, and then press on Control End. And that's going to set the end frame. Similarly, if you do Control Home, it's going to do the start frame. So control home to set the start frame and control end to set the end frame. Home and end keys are the ones above your arrows. So that's pretty much it. For now, I'm going to leave this as it is, frame 0 and frame 250. And I'm also going to click on control T to go back to the frame viewing range. Now let me explain what these buttons do. So this is pretty much the same thing as playing the animation and pressing spacebar. So you can also press on spacebar, or you can also press on this one to play the animation. And if you click on this one, it's going to play the animation in reverse, like this. These are used to jump between the keyframes. So like I told you, you can jump like an up and down using the up and down arrows. And I'm going to show you what these do later when we start keyframing. And this is going to jump you in the last keyframe. And this is going to jump you in the first keyframe, depending on what frame range you have. So if you click on the rightmost arrow, it's going to jump you to the end frame to 50. If you click on the leftmost arrow, it's going to jump you to start frame, like so. We also have these functions, like for example, jump time by delta or the snapping, but I don't use it that often, but there might be some cases where we're going to use it. We also have this important recording or auto keyframing button, and I'm going to show you what that does in a bit. So first, let's learn how to move the cube from one place to another, or scale it or rotate it from one point to another. And that's pretty easy. So once you know how to use the timeline, move around, move this cursor, move this timeline, make sure to go to frame 0. And now what we need to do is set some keyframes to let Blender know that at this point, I want the cube to be here. At this point, I want the cube to be here. Basically, keyframes act like markers. So let's learn how to set a keyframe. In Blender 5, when you select an object, what you need to do is hover over the 3D viewport and then press on K. Now it's going to give you a lot of options, but remember the 80-20 rule, you don't have to know everything. What you need to pay attention is location, rotation, and scale. Now, I want to change the location of the cube, which is why I'm going to set the location keyframe. So click location. And now if you notice, if I zoom in on the timeline and move this playhead outside, you can see I have this diamond-shaped keyframe. This is a keyframe which says Blender that on 0, the location of the cube is 0. And the way I know the location of the cube is 0 is I can press on N, I can go to item, and now you can see the location right here is 0. 0 on X, 0 on Y, this is 0 on Z. This is because it's a world origin, it's like a spawn point in a game, and everything is 0. But if I press on G, and then press on X, and then move the cube on the right side, you can see on the top right that the X location is changing. So I can either press on GX and then move the cube manually, or I can either move this like here. For example, I can type a -4 and move the cube on 4 meters. Or additionally, I'm going to teach you another useful tool. If I press on G and then X and then hold Control, this is going to snap the cube to 1 meter increments, like so. As you can see, it's moving around a lot cleaner, like this. And if you want to enable snapping always, you can press on this magnet button and it's going to do the same thing. GX. Now it's going to do the same thing as you would hold Control. But if you have a magnet enabled and you press GX and you press Control, now it's going to disable the magnet. So that's what you should keep in mind. I usually like to keep this off and then use snapping manually, so GX and then do the Control. Now we're telling Blender that on frame 0, the cube stays right here. And then on frame, for example, 30, which means in 1 second, I want the cube to move by 4 meters or 5 meters, for example. And the way I can do that is I can move to frame 30. Then I can press on G, X, and then move it using Control. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, like so. And now don't do anything else. You can see that we have no keyframe. We didn't confirm the movement. So if you want to confirm the movement, press on K again, and then press on location, and now it's going to be confirmed. So if you notice, the colors of these are changing frequently. So if the values are gray, for example, on rotation and scale, it means that there are no keyframes. Now, if it's green, it's basically telling me that the value already has been keyframed, but I'm not on the current keyframe. If I'm on 0, for example, it's orange. And if I'm on 30, it's going to turn orange, which is telling me that it has been keyframed and I'm on that keyframe, basically. But if I go to frame 45, for example, and then press on G and then Z and then move it up by 2 meters, you can see the value is dark orange, which is telling me that I moved the object, but I did not confirm the movement yet, which is why I need to press on K location. Or another thing I can do is hover over the Z, right click, and then click on insert single keyframe. And that's going to insert the keyframe on Z. Or I can right click and insert keyframe, and it's going to insert keyframe on every value, which is like X, Y, and Z. So what I basically did, as I told Blender, from 0 to 30, I wanted the cube to move on the X-axis by 5 meters. And then from 30 to frame 45, I want the cube to move up by 2 meters. Now if I play the animation, it's going to look like this. That's it. Location change and location changed here. And we can do the same thing for the rotation. So what we can do is we can disregard this because I don't really use it that often. So I can press on M. And I'm just going to show you how to do it with shortcuts. So press on K. And now if you want to change the rotation, you need to set the rotation keyframe like so. And we're going to have another rotation keyframe applied right here. Now go to frame 30. And what we can do is instead of manually going, we can use the up and down arrows. So Down arrow jumps on frame 30, up arrow jumps on frame 0. But I don't like this. I want the up arrow to go forward and down arrow to go backwards because it's the opposite right now. So I'm going to go to Edit and Preferences, go to Key Map, click on Jump. Let's type Jump. And we have Jump to Keyframe right here, up arrow and down arrow. I'm going to reverse these. So Jump to Keyframe, the bottom one, I'm going to set this to up arrow. And then up arrow, I'm going to change this to down arrow. I know it might be a bit complicated, but feel free to follow along. And now, if I go back, if I press on up arrow, that's going to jump forward. And down arrow is going to jump backwards. And that's how I'm used to do it. Some people like to set it on Q and E, for example, and you can go to Edit Preferences and then change it to however you want. I'm just going to close this for now and continue animating. So again, we set a keyframe for here on the rotation. Now, if I go to frame 30, I can press on, for example, RX, then RZ, or double tap R, and then rotate this however I want. Then I'm going to press on K to make sure we remember this rotation. Press on rotation, and that's it. Now I'm going to go to frame 45, and let's say I want the cube to return to its starting rotation. I can press on Alt-R, and then press on K, and set the rotation keyframe. Now if I play the animation, the cube rotates like this, and then goes back to its starting rotation, like so. And I can do the same thing for the scale. Again, go to frame 0, let's press on K, and then set the scale keyframe. Then go to frame 30, and let's say I want the cube to shrink down on frame 30. I can press on S, and if I want to bring the side panel, you can see the scale is going to change here. So if I press on S, you can see the scale is changing like so. And since it's dark orange, it's telling me that I changed the value, but I didn't set a keyframe. So press on K, scale, and boom, that's it. So the scale keyframe is set. Then let's go to frame 45, and I'm going to press on Alt-S, and let's say I want to scale it along the x-axis. So S, and then press on X, like so. And let's say I want to shrink it on the Z-axis, S and the Z, shrink it like so. And again, if you want to confirm the movement, confirm the change, press on K, press on scale, and that's pretty much it. Now if I play back my animation with the spacebar, you can see we have this animation of the cube changing shapes, changing rotations, and changing location like so. Now I can go to frame 70, for example, and I want to return the cube back to normal. So I'm going to press on Alt-G, Alt-S, Alt-R. And now what we need to do is press on K, and instead of setting like location, rotation, scale manually, you can do that, but you can do location, rotation, and scale at the same time. So select this one, location, rotation, and scale, and boom, now it's going to confirm all the movements. So that's pretty much it. Now if you play the animation, you can see we have this animation. So that's a pretty fun way to play around with the keyframes. Feel free to sit down, break the object, do different keyframes, do different speed. And while we're here, this is a very important thing to tell you that timeline keyframes work almost the same way as selecting an object. So if you remember, if I take the cube and press on G for grab, you can move it. Similarly, if I take the keyframe, for example, on frame 30, I can press on G and then move this either right or left, which means that if I move the animation, move the keyframe on the right side, the animation is going to be slower because it's going to have more keyframes to cover. But if I move this on the left side, the animation is going to be faster. So if I move from 30 to 15, the animation is going to be twice as fast. If I go from 30 to 60, the animation is going to be twice as slow, basically. So that's one thing you should keep in mind is you can manipulate the keyframe location to change the speed of the animation. What you can also do is move towards the beginning. And then if you want to select all the keyframes, you can either box select them like this or press on A. And what you want to do is if you want to change the speed of the entire animation, then you can use S for scale, like here. So press on S, and you can see if I move on the right side, it's going to move the keyframes on the right. If I move on the left, it's going to shrink the keyframes and make the animation a lot faster, like so. And this is something we're going to learn in a bit while we start animating. Right now, you don't have to do it for now. But rotation doesn't work in the timeline because if I press on R, it's going to bring up a different menu, which is a professional term of different keyframes, but we don't have to know this for now. All you have to know right now is G to grab the keyframes and S to scale the keyframes. And the important thing to keep in mind is the timeline keyframes are going to be scaled to wherever you have the cursor. So if I move the cursor or play it here, and if I press on S, they're going to be scaled from the cursor, similarly here. And one cool trick I want to show you is that the way you can select keyframes is obviously you can press on A, select all, box select, and then shift box select to select multiple, or you can also select left click, shift left click, similarly like you would do in other objects. But another thing you can do is, for example, if I'm on frame 40 and I want to select everything on the right side and not everything on the left side, I can do Control, left click. Now it's going to select everything that is on the right side of the playhead. If I do the same thing on the left side, I can do Control, left click, Now it's going to select everything that is on the left side. That's a pretty useful and pretty cool hotkey to keep in mind. Again, I know I'm dumping a bunch of information, but if it's too complicated, don't worry, because we're going to do it in actual practice, and we're going to learn how to animate the Minecraft character, and we're going to learn how to animate the character, and this is going to be basically become second nature for you the more you animate. Now let's continue. Now, I want to delete the keyframe, so the way I can do that is I can press on A, press on X, and then delete all the keyframes. But I deleted it from frame 8, and my cube is stuck like this. So let's go back to frame 0, and I press on Alt-R, Alt-G, Alt-S. That's it. Now, if you want to animate a lot of characters, obviously pressing K, location, or scale is like very time-consuming, right? So what you can do is enable this button, which I told you previously. So enable this record button, which is called auto keyframing. And now what you can do is press on K. For example, set a location keyframe, move forward, press on G, X, and now it's going to automatically set a keyframe. As you can see, we have the auto keyframing enabled. So if I go to frame 35, I can move, and now it's going to select the location keyframe. But if I, for example, move to frame 45 and then scale down, it's not going to change the scale because I did not set the scale keyframe in the beginning. So the auto keyframing will remember whatever you set before. Let me show you a better example. So if I, for example, go here and then rotate, the cube is going to be stuck like this forever, like so, because I didn't confirm the first rotation keyframe in the beginning. So if I want to change all the values, what I can do is go back, press on K, and then choose location, rotation, and scale. And now if I go, I can change whatever values I want, animate, and then the keyframes are going to be set automatically like so. As you can see, if I set location, rotation, and scale keyframes in the beginning, Blender is going to remember to set keyframes for all of those right here. And another thing to keep in mind is while we're animating with the auto keyframing, it's important to know what kind of keying set we have. And right now, it's not visible. In the previous Blender versions, it was visible here. So to see the keying set, what we can do is click on this clock icon, and it switches from timeline to the dope sheet. Now, once you click on the dope sheet, it's not visible by default, but we're going to hover over this tiny arrow like here, and then click and drag this up to expand this. And now you can see we have the timeline-like structure here, but the difference is that we have keying over here. So make sure to click on this keying. So if I click this, you can see it looks pretty similar to what we did when we pressed K. But the difference is that I want to tell Blender to set the location and rotation and scale keyframes every time, so I don't have to press on K and then select them manually every time. So if I press on keying, if I select this, I can choose location, rotation, and scale, and then make sure I have the auto keyframing enabled. And now I can start animating from here. So if you like this view, you can keep it like this. Or if you don't like it, you can make sure you have the keying set and then go back to the timeline. But for this animation episode, I'm just going to keep the dope sheet enabled like so. And we can play from here and then set the keyframes from here. And really quickly, if you want to make your dope sheet look like mine on the screen, then you can hover over this tiny arrow, click here, and then expand the summary. And if you want to see more of the summary, you can click here, and then you will see the keyframes in more detail. Now, let's continue. And just to do a quick exercise, yes, I can press on K and then choose location, rotation, and scale, move it and change it. But since I already set an auto keyframing, and since I already have location, rotation, and scale keying set, what I can do is instead of K, I can press on I, and Blender is going to remember everything and place 9 keyframes for location and rotation and scale. So instead of K, in the beginning, you can just press on I, and when you move forward, you don't have to press anything. Blender is going to do everything for you, like so. So you can just move, go crazy, animate, change the shapes, just break the shape, and just feel free to exercise with this. And again, play around with the scale. So press on A, S to shrink it and make the animation a lot faster, make it slower, delete some keyframes, just break it and experiment, and you're going to get used to it pretty fast. So now I'm going to delete everything, go back, turn off auto keyframing for now, because if I do Alt-R, Alt-G, Alt-S, it's going to set the keyframe unnecessarily. So I'm just going to delete these keyframes for now because I don't need them. And whenever I'm doing anything where I don't want any animation, I just turn off auto keyframing temporarily and then adjust whatever I want. Another important concept I want to teach you is the keyframe interpolation. So whenever you create 2 keyframes, Blender automatically interpolates and creates a smooth curve between the keyframes. So right now we have the Bezier interpolation. But if I want to change the interpolation and make this movement, for example, more robotic, I can press on A to select all the keyframes, press on T, and then go to the left side. You can ignore these for now. And then we have constant, linear, and Bezier. By default, everything is set to Bezier. But if I click on linear, the animation is going to be evenly distributed from one frame to another, and there's going to be a flat line connecting the 2 keyframes like so. Now, this is good for robotic movements, but for natural movements, what you want to do is make sure you keep everything as default. So you can press on A, T, and then Bezier, and make sure everything is Bezier and smooth. We also have constant interpolation. So if I press on T, and then set this to constant, Blender is going to have no movement between the keyframes. So it's going to jump right here. As soon as it hits this 30 frame, it's going to jump here. If I, for example, move this up, It's going to jump from 30 to 40, like so. I'm just going to show you a difference right now. You don't have to follow along. So if I press on Control Tab, enter the graph editor, and then press on T, and then make this Bezier, a numpad period to frame select. So just don't follow along with this. I'm just going to demonstrate it. So if I expand this, hide everything else, I only need the X location. You can see how the red line is smooth, right? This is the X location keyframe. But as soon as I select this, right, and then press on T, make this linear, you can see it becomes like flat. But if I choose constant, you can see what happens to the line. It becomes flat, which means there is no movement between the two keyframes, like so. But mostly, what you want to keep in mind to simplify this is keep everything as Bezier. Now, if you want to learn more about the graph editor and how keyframe interpolation works, then you can check out this tutorial that I have on YouTube. I highly recommend checking it. I know it's like 1 hour long, but it's very useful. And it's going to teach you a lot of things about animation concepts, graph editor, and at the end, you're going to be able to create this cute bouncing slime animation. The link for that, along with other resources, will be in the description, of course. So let me show you a difference in a more practical way. So we have 3 cubes, and they all cover the same distance at the same time, but it's going to look way different on how they cover the distance. So if I play the animation, you can see we have different motions. This is constant, this is linear, and then this is Bezier. As you can see, this looks a lot smoother, especially when we start animating human-like characters, like Minecraft characters. We're going to need like Bezier motion. So those are the 3 main keyframes, but you also have other options in the graph editor which you can have fun with. For example, if I select this, press on A, T, and then make this bounce, I can also make this elastic, and I can also make this, for example, cubic. You guys, we can get like a bunch of fun results like so. So feel free to play around with these. But I mostly use linear, Bezier, and constant. And if I need to change anything, I manually change them in a graph editor. But this is a great way to have fun with different keyframes and experiment. And another important thing you should keep in mind is before we jump into character animation, I told you that you can press on G and then any axis like X, Z, or Y. But you can also press on G, click and hold on middle mouse. Now it's going to give you this menu. And if you move, for example, on right, it's going to snap on the X axis. If you move, for example, up and down, it's going to snap on the Z-axis. And if you move on the side by side on the Y-axis, it's going to snap on Y-axis. That's something I use a lot. Instead of G, Y, GX, or G, Z, I use G and then middle mouse. And now it's going to quickly snap it and move around. So that's what I often use in my character animation, which you're going to be seeing me using. And one more important concept I want to teach you before we jump straight into animating the character is the concept of world space and local space. So I'm going to go here and enable the Z for now. You don't have to do it. But this intersection right here between the 3 lines is the world space. So if I move GX here, this is the world space. GY is the world space here. And then GZ is the world space right here. Similarly, if I rotate, for example, on RX, this is the world space, RY, and then RZ. You can see the faces of the cube are perfectly aligned to the world space. But as soon as I take the cube, for example, R and then Z, and rotate this, now the cube's faces are no longer facing the world origin. Instead, the cube just got its own local space. So let me explain the difference. If I press on G, and then X, and then move the cube, you can see it's moving on the world axis like I did before, Z, and then Y. But what if I want to move the cube here and not here? I can do that by pressing G, Y, and then Y again. And now it's going to create its own local axis. Again, same thing for X. G, X, and then X. It's going to move here. And then if I rotate it up like this is going to be its own local Z axis. So if I press on G, Z, it's going to go like this. And if I want its own local Z axis, I can press on Z. Now it's going to move up and down like this. Now, don't worry if it seems complicated right now. You're going to learn and grasp it as soon as I start animating the characters, so don't worry about it for now. But that's what I wanted you to keep in mind. There is a world space and there is a local space, which you can change from here. Global, local, but we don't have to do that because we can press G and then X or double tap X, and that's it. So to simplify this, you press once for the world space and twice for the local space. And we're going to learn that through practice. And now we can delete the default cube. And let me show you a good way to delete actually everything inside the collection. So if you have a bunch of things in your collection, instead of clicking delete, it's not going to delete everything properly. So what you can do is right click on the collection, click on delete hierarchy, and it's going to delete everything else. I'm also going to get rid of the Z axis. And again, remember, whenever you delete objects, click on File, Clean Up, and Purge Unused Data. Click on this, and it's just going to keep your scene a lot cleaner. Now it's time to start animation, so we can go back to our lovely scene. We can enable Map, Assets, and Studio together by dragging down. Press on numpad 0 to go to the camera view. Now let's select the character. Let's again split the screens. So I'm going to right click, split. I'm going to stay here without the overlay. So I'm just going to click here and minimize this because we don't need these menus while we're animating. I'm also going to expand the screen, turn this off, and I can actually go to the flat shading right here. And I can actually go to the flat shading here. I can actually click on the middle mouse, move this on the right side to access this menu. And then let's go to the flat shading. So you already know how to move the objects, move the bones, enter the pose mode, add some keyframes. So now it's time to start the actual animation. So I want to create this animation you see on the screen. Steve is going to have no sword, and then he's going to rotate his arm and then spawn the sword in his hand, and then he's going to wink at the camera. That's pretty simple to create. You already know a lot of concepts, so you can just follow along. Again, feel free to take a break if you feel tired, and come back to this video whenever you want. So what I'm going to do is make sure I'm inside the dope sheet, make sure I enable the auto keyframing, and let's make sure I have the location, rotation, and scale turned on. When you're animating character, you don't have to have the scale turned on. You have to turn on the scale for the sword because we want to make it appear in the middle of the animation. But let's keep this as simple as possible, and let's keep location, rotation, and scale turned on. Now what we need to do is let's go to the character, select it, click on Control Tab, and let's set the first keyframe on frame 0. So if I like this pose, I'm going to select all of the character's bones that I want to animate. So I'm going to select the arms, shift select both of them. Then shift select the torso, pelvis, and hips. Shift select the head. If it's tricky for you to select the bone, make sure to click outside and not inside because it's going to select the trees. So I can click outside the bone. And if you don't want to select the trees or anything else, again, go to edit and then enable lock object modes for now because we already parented the sword. Now if you press on shift and then click anywhere, it's not going to select anything. So that's why I like to keep this enabled whenever I'm animating. Now shift select both legs, the bottom ones. And now press on I. Make sure we have a keyframe set for the character's bones. I'm going to select the sword as well and make sure we have a keyframe set. Now I cannot select the sword because I enabled this. So I'm just going to click on Control Tab to go outside the character's pose mode, select the sword, I, and that's pretty much it. Another thing I recommend is if you want to do some fancy animations with the sword and fancy rotations, you can go to the object properties like here. And then in the mode, you can change this from XYZ Euler to ZYX Euler. Right now, I'm not going to do any fancy animations, so I can just keep this on as it is. But if you want to like do a sword throwing animation or whatever, make sure to change this to ZYX Euler. But for now, let's keep this at default and let's start animating. So when you're animating characters, first you're going to do key poses. And after that, you're going to fill in the key poses with the breakdowns, which connect the key poses with each other. And then after that, you can do in-between movements, which connect like the breakdowns and key poses with each other. So let's learn everything step by step and let's not get too carried away. So again, go back to pose mode of the character. And now what I want to do is first I'm going to play my animation and let's imagine how long the animation is going to be. So right, left, sword pops, and then character winks at the camera. I think around 120 should be enough. But if we don't like it, we can change this later on. So I'm going to go to frame 120. And again, I can press on Control End, or I can type 120 manually here. Now we're ready to animate. If you want to frame this timeline and make it wider, you can press on Home key. Now it's going to frame the timeline like so. So let's go to frame 0. Make sure we have keyframes set. So now I want to animate every 20 frames. And then I'm going to change the speed later on. What I mean by that is first I'm going to create key poses on 20, then 40, then 60, and 80, and so on. So let me show you what I mean. First, I'm going to go to frame 20. And I want my character to turn right to kind of grab the sword. So I'm going to grab the pelvis, which is this bone, press on R, Z, and then now rotate it on the right side. Let's do the same thing for the torso. Press on R, Z, rotate it. And then I'm going to grab the arm, press on RR, double tap, like so. R to rotate from the view, like so. And then let's rotate the arm like this. Don't worry that the sword goes through the character for now. We're going to fix this later on. Then I'm going to take this arm and slightly move it like so. And then I want the character to slightly crouch down so I can select the pelvis, press on G, Z, and then move it down. And I'm going to double tap R like this. And then I want the head to go backwards like so. So I'm going to double tap R and maybe he's going to look down. And what I can do as well, instead of R, I can take the shoulder, the entire arm, and then move it forward like so. Press on G and then move it forward like this. So I'm on frame 20 and creating my key pose or the golden pose. So let's see how it looks. Like so. Maybe I want the movement to be more extreme. So I'm going to go back, RR, like so. We can animate the legs, but right now I'm going to leave this at default. And we don't have to animate the face for now. We're just going to create like golden poses. Then what I want to do is I want to extend this movement slightly. So I'm going to go to frame 30. And I want to extend the movement like the character crouching. And then I want to make the character crouch down even more. So I'm going to take this and slightly, for example, rotate this. Basically, I'm doing the continuation of the movement like so. Rotate here. And then move the arm inwards like so. Just add a subtle motion because it's going to make it feel more natural. So if I go to frame 20 and 30, you can see there's a continuation of the motion like this. 1. I think that looks decent. And we can fix this later on if we don't like it. So I'm going to press on spacebar, and I'm keep using this black line to drag the cursor over here, and then press on spacebar to play the animation. Now I'm going to go forward 20 frames. You can either go to frame 50 like this, or you can actually click on the step, click on the right arrow to start typing, and then type plus 20. That's going to jump you on frame 50. It's actually a pretty cool trick to use. So now I'm going to grab the arm and then rotate it out. Rotate this out like this. Press on Alt-G because I want to return this to where it was. So I'm going to press on Alt-G like so. Now I'm going to rotate this, and I want to rotate the body like so. But if I want to make this easier, I can press on Alt-R like this. Now I'm going to press on RZ, rotate this, RZ to rotate this. Generally, when you're animating, I highly recommend using the reference. But for now, I'm just going to animate from my imagination. So let's move the arm forward. So Steve is going to show the viewer that he basically spawned the sword. Move this forward maybe. And then I'm going to select the body, press GZ, and then move this up like so. And I'm going to take the arm, maybe press on G, and then slightly move it backwards. And then the head is going to be out like so. And then let's check the animation. Takes it, spawns the sword. 1, 2. 1, 2. And then I want to do another continuation of the movement. So since Steve turned around like so, let's fix the pose like this. And since I did the continuation here, I want to do the same thing. So go forward on 10 frames and then add a slight rotation like so. So Steve continues moving and it looks more natural. So I'm going to move the arm up even more. Tilt the head again, and let's check the animation. Let's see how it looks. Boom. So let's rewatch the animation, see if we like it. So there's a continuation, and after frame 60, I want Steve to wink to the viewer. So what I can do is basically add a basic winking, and then I can fix the facial expressions later on. So on frame 60, I want to take this eye bone. So if you want to control both eyes, you can select this. It's going to select both. But if you want to control one of the eyes, you can zoom in and then select this, one of the bones, and then press on G to move it down or up. So I'm going to press on I, make sure to set a keyframe because we have no keyframes for the face. So I'm going to select the eye bone, press on I, and then since eye blinking motions are fast, we can actually do this on 5 frames. So I'm going to go forward 5 frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using my arrows, and then press on G and then move it down like this. Press on I to confirm, and make sure you confirm that you have the keyframe set. Then go forward on frame 70. And what we can do is 2 ways. For example, I can do Alt-G to reset the location, or I can select the frame 60 because it's the same, and I can do Shift-D and then copy the keyframe and then place it on frame 70. You can actually copy the keyframes in Blender. And now if you play this animation, you can see Steve winks at the viewer like so. If it's a bit too slow, we can take the keyframe, for example, take these 2 keyframes, G and then move it back. We can take the last keyframe, G and then move it back. And now it's a lot faster. So let's play back the animation. Takes it, grabs the sword, spawns it, boom. And I want the body continuation to continue around frame 90. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the body and rotate this even more. Maybe slightly rotate the arm down. Move this backwards. And I'm just adding like subtle motion to the character. And let's see the animation. Grabs the sword, boom, wink. So what I want to do is I want to select everything now and make the animation a bit slower. So the way I can do that is I can press on A to select all characters' bones, and let's rewatch the animation. So I think I can make this grabbing part a lot slower. So again, I can move the playhead on frame 20, then do Control, left click. Now it's going to select everything that is on the right side and underneath the playhead. So I'm going to press on G, grab it, and let's move it on frame 30. So let's see what we have. 1, 2. So these are our golden poses. Now, the animation ends at frame 100, so what we can do is move to frame 100, and again, type 100 here, or just do Control End, and that's pretty much it. So now we have the golden poses, and we need to add the breakdown poses, which connect the golden poses, because without those, the animation is going to look stiff. So what I want to do is go between the key poses. So for example, we need to go to frame 15, then maybe we need to go between here, or maybe it's not going to be needed. We need to go between these, and between these. And as we animate, you're going to get the idea. So now what I want, instead of like character turning slowly, I want the character to lift his hand in the middle on frame 15 and then lift his body up slightly to show that he's going to grab something. So let's go to frame 15, select the right arm, press on RR twice to move it up like so. Maybe rotate this out like this. Don't worry about the sword right now. So I have the arm moving up. Maybe I can rotate it slightly, maybe slightly lift the head, slightly lift the body using RR, and slightly move it out. And let's see what we have. Now this looks better, but we can add even more motions later on. So maybe I can take this arm as well and then rotate this and then rotate this inwards like so. And now right here, I want this arm to be closer to the body as if he's taking something from the inventory. So what I can do is go to frame 30, press on R to rotate, press on G to move it like so. Don't overdo this. And then press on R to rotate even more like so. Now, this is going to create an issue on frame 40. So if you move to frame 40, you can see the continuation of the motion. It's not actually bad, but what we can do is first select both keyframes. So select the upper arm and the lower arm. Then select the keyframe on frame 30 like so by dragging. And then I can do Shift D and then place it on frame 40. By the way, if you don't see the keyframes by 3 lines, you might have this turned off, collapsed. So I can actually enable this or disable this. To keep things simple, I'm just going to collapse the summary and keep everything as one frame. And then we have this keyframe. And then to add a continuation of the motion, I'm going to R to rotate even more like so. 1 and then 2. So let's continue from here. Let's add more breakdowns. Now to add breakdowns, you can actually do it manually or use the Blender's breakdowner tool. So for example, right here, I can either manually animate things or I can hover over the 3D viewport and press on Shift E. Now this is going to give me the breakdowner tool, which you can see right here above. So I can either go to the left side or the right side. And I can adjust the pose to my liking, for example, right here. Or if you want to animate manually, then you can adjust the pose like so. And I can select for example, the torso too. Let's add a continuation for the torso on frame 40. Let's move it backwards like so. And then go between like frame 40 and 60, which is 50. And then do Shift E, and I can either move this on the left or right. Let's move this on the left for now. So we have this motion. Boom. I want to move this up even more. And now let me teach you how to despawn and spawn the sword pretty easily. So right here, the sword should not be visible, but right around on frame 50, the sword should become visible. So what we can do is make sure we have location, rotation, and scale enabled. Then go out of the pose mode of the character, select the sword, and then just press on I. Simply press on I and that's it. Go forward on around frame 60, like here. Then press on I again to tell Blender that we want the sword to be here. And maybe like rotate this forward slightly so that the viewer sees the sword a lot better. Then we can adjust the camera later on, but let's keep it like so. And then go back on frame 40 where you pressed on I. And what we can do is press on S and then type 0 on your keyboard to basically make the sword disappear. And now if I play the animation, we have this issue where the sword despawns and then spawns again. So I'm going to go back to frame 0 and I can either do the same thing. So press on S and then 0, or I can just select this keyframe and delete it because we don't need the keyframe on frame 0 because it starts on frame 40 and then ends at frame 60. So now if I play the animation, you can see we have this sword spawning animation. Obviously it goes through the character's face, but we can fix this frame by frame as we go on. But generally that's the idea. Steve spawns the sword and then winks at the viewer, and that's pretty much it. So now let's add a breakdown of the sword. So we have the frames on 40 and 60. So we need to go between them, which is 50, and then take the sword, move this down, move this forward, and maybe scale this down even more. So that's going to be more snappy once it scales up, like so. Boom. That's pretty much it. Now we need to continue animating the character. So let's go back to pose mode, select the torso, and let's go forward. And then right here, maybe I want the character to move. And also I want the character to rotate his hand down so that it has like more impact. So if I go between 40 and 60, which is 50, I can rotate the arm down like so. And we have this cool animation. Boom, character spawns the sword like this. I can also tilt the body slightly down if I want to. Now you can also play around with the arm position, the left arm. So I can just grab this and maybe move it backwards on frame 40 slightly. Make sure there's like no big jump in the movements between frame 30 and 40. And then lastly, what I want to do is maybe I want to go here on frame 70 and delete the keyframe. Do the same thing for the left arm. I actually don't have a keyframe. And go back to frame 100. And I want this to move backwards slightly. We can also animate it from this view if you want, like so. Press on Alt-G to move it backwards on the starting position. And press on R to slightly make it more straight, like so. Now let's play the animation. Right now, I don't like the way his hand like moves forward, the left hand. So I'm just going to take this and then rotate this backwards slightly so that there's like less motion, like this. So when the character spawns the sword, I think he winks way too soon. So I can take the eyes, like so, take the eye keyframes, and then zoom in on my timeline, select these, and then move them like on the right side. So he can start winking later on. So grabs the sword, boom. And when he spawns the sword, I want his head to tilt sideways like here on the between frame 70 and frame 100 to show that he's like proud of what he did, like so. So let's see. Spawns the sword, and it tilts the head on the right side subtly. Something like this. Now what we need to do is start polishing the animation and add some extra in between keyframes if they're needed. So for example, I'm going to go to frame 30 and then move the character down even more. And then before he jumps up, I'm going to move him down even more. And then boom, he's going to jump. So it's going to have like more impact. Then I'm going to rotate him inwards even more. I'm just basically adding some extra keyframes. What I also want to do is take the leg and then move it on the right side, move it on the back side. Again, I'm using G and then middle mouse to snap it on the x-axis and then rotate it like so. I think this is a better pose. When the character rotates, his leg is not going to be like bent unnaturally. So I have this pose and then boom. Now I want this arm to be rotated in the midway. So on frame 15, I'm actually going to take this and rotate it like so. I'm just using R to rotate from my view. So I have this pose, which is a bit too much. So maybe like tune it down slightly, like so. R. And also I want the body to be moving up. And I'm basically readjusting some poses as I go on. Maybe on frame 15, the head goes closer to the body, to the inventory, to see what he's up to. Like so. And maybe do the same thing for the body. And maybe move it on the side even more. So I'm going to select this, rotate even more here. And let's see what we have. And I want to give it head a slight tilt. So on frame 15, I'm going to rotate this sideways like so. Maybe minimize the arm motion. So I'm going to rotate this R or RR twice and then rotate this down. And what I want to do is before he spawns, like here, I want to have a more impact, which means that I'm going to go to frame 45 and then press on R, Z, and then rotate this to the previous position and do the same thing. R, Z, and then rotate this to where the character's body was previously here. And now this motion is going to be faster and more snappy. So boom, like this. So on frame 40, we had him rotated on the left side of his perspective. Then on frame 45, we did the same. We did like a hold pose. And then on frame 50, he's going to like explode and then move on the right side like so. And it's going to make the animation look more snappy like this. So yeah, I think it's coming along really great. Now I'm going to polish this animation. I'm just going to time-lapse this part and I'm going to do the same thing like I did previously. I don't have to do any commentary because you already know how to set up keyframes and play around with the animation, play around with poses. So if I show you every single step, it's going to turn very boring. So I'm just going to watch the animation and fix some parts that I don't like. Now I want to animate the face. So right now he looks default. So I want to make him like a smirk or having like a grin at the camera. So maybe like turn this down. I can actually select these bones and then press on R to rotate inwards. I can use S as well to scale it up or down. Let's do S for the eyes, scale it like this. And let's move the mouth. Select this mouth bone, press on G. And then make him smirk like so. And then maybe press on S to show he's happy. Let's make him look at the viewer like so. Give him like a side eye. So now before he grabs the sword, he's going to start looking. And the eyes usually move very fast. So what I want to do is go on like frame 10, press on I, and then go forward like 3 frames or 4 frames. And let's move it backwards or down like this by using G. Or maybe I can actually take this and then start moving the eyes sooner. So take both keyframes, move them on frame 5. And the eyes are going to move like so. I think it's a bit too fast, so maybe I can slow this down by 2 frames. When he moves, his eyes are going to start moving even more. So maybe go to frame 40. And let's make him focus on the sword, which is about to appear. They'll go on frame 55. And let's again animate this, make him look at the sword. Go on frame, for example, 60. And now he's going to look up at his sword like so proudly. Then he's going to look at it again on frame 75. And then he's going to look at the viewer before he winks. So let's go to frame 80. Make him look at the viewer. And then he's going to wink like so. Let's also fix the wink. So just look at the sword, looks at the viewer. I think this is a bit too fast, so maybe I'm going to take frame 75 before he looks at the viewer. So I'm going to take this and move it on frame 70, so it's a lot slower and smoother. I think that looks good. What we also need to do is when he winks, we also need to move the eyebrow slightly, but not too much. So let's take this bone, and we have a wink frame on 80, 82, 85, and then 88. So let's do the same thing for the eyebrow. So this thing controls the entire eyebrow. You can either scale this, move this, or rotate this, but I want to use the GZ method to move it down. So I'm going to press I on 82. Let's go forward when he winks on frame 85. Press GZ, slightly move this down, and then again, go forward, and I can either do Alt-G, or I can select this keyframe, and then Shift-D, and then duplicate it and place it right here. Now we have this motion. The eyebrow slightly moves. Also, I want the head to bob forward slightly. So I'm going to select the head bone, press on I, and then go on frame 85 where he winks. Press on R, and then remember the local axis, right? Press on R, X, and then X again, so that it rotates on the local X axis, like so. And then go on frame 88, for example, and then select this and press on Shift-D and set the pose to what we had before. And we have the slight bobbing. It's a bit too much, so I'm going to go to middle, where he moves the head down, and I'm going to press R, X, X, slightly rotate this up, and then do the same thing here, maybe slightly rotate this down. Basically, I'm just readjusting the pose. And I think that looks good. So grabs the sword, and then boom, winks. Grabs the sword, and then winks. So right now, I'm going to go and then manually adjust the keyframes, and then I'm going to time-lapse this part again, and I'm going to come back to you once the animation is finished. Basically, I'm going to take a look at the animations, see what I like, what I don't like, and then readjust the poses. Now, last thing I need to do is I want to extend the last keyframes right here. So I'm going to select all the keyframes on frame 100 and then move them on frame 110. And let's set the end frame to frame 110. Something like this. Let's play back the animation. I think that looks pretty decent. So I've been to polish the animation and animate it the way you like. I'm pretty happy with how this looks. And as always, while you're animating, make sure to save your scene. Control S. Save it. Now, what I'm noticing is that on the body, frame 40 on the pelvis and the torso looks a bit weird. So I can go to frame 40, select this, one of the keyframes, delete this, select this, and then delete this as well. Now I think this looks a lot better. So sometimes you might want to delete some keyframes if they're not serving well with your animation. So that's exactly what I did here. And now what I want to do is animate the camera, which is pretty simple. I'm going to keep everything simple. So I'm going to Control Tab to go outside the pose mode. Select the camera, and let's go to frame 0 and then press on I to make sure we have a keyframe set for camera. And let's adjust this wherever we want. So I want this to be first shot. So what I want the camera to do is go forward, and then right before he spawns the sword, I want the camera to like jump forward and make a camera cut. So what we can do is go to frame 45, and then press on Shift F, and then move the camera slightly forward using W. So let's see what we have. We have a Bezier motion on the camera, and we don't want that. So I'm going to press on A and press on T and then set the camera motion to linear. Now the camera is going to have a linear motion. And right on frame 45, I want to jump the camera forward to have a camera cut. So what we can do, make sure you're on frame 45. Press on I to make sure you keyframe all channels of the camera. If you don't, you can see that everything is not going to be keyframed. But if I press on I, location and rotation is going to be keyframed. You don't have to pay attention to the scale because it doesn't matter how many times you change the scale of the camera. It's not going to have any effect. So we need to change the location and rotation properties. Then what we need to do is use the right arrow to go forward one frame like this on frame 46. Or I can also manually go on frame 46 like this by dragging the timeline playhead. And then I can press a Shift F and then move this camera forward towards the character's upper body like so. And if we play the animation, we have the camera going forward and then cutting forward like so. And once the camera cuts forward, I want to move this even closer, and then maybe move this slightly here. And then I want the camera to follow the sword's motion. So what we can do is go on frame, for example, 65 or 60, where the sword is at the highest. Press Shift F and then press E to move it up, A to move it on the side slightly. We have this motion. And then I want the camera to go down on frame 80. So press G, Z, and then move it down like so. And then I want it to keep moving down and backwards. So I'm going to go to frame 110, press Shift F and then press S to make it go backwards, and then Q to move it down. Let's see what we get. With the character moving forward, camera cuts, goes down. But I think the camera is moving backwards way too much on frame 110. So I'm going to press Shift F and then move it forward like so. Now, one cool trick you can do is if you want to preview this entire screen, you can hover over this 3D viewport space and press on Control Space. Now you can press on spacebar to play the animation like so that we can review this on the full screen. So I'm going to go back. So I can go back by pressing Control Space again. So I think the camera cut happened like a lot later. So maybe when he grabs the sword like here, maybe I can jump. So maybe go to frame 52. Select these 3 keyframes. So this is the camera cut and this is the camera going up. So I'm going to press G and then move them on the right side like so. And let's see what we get. Yeah, I think that makes more sense. So the sword spawns and then the camera goes forward a little bit later. So that doesn't look robotic. And the camera follows the character and camera doesn't predict the character's motion, if that makes sense. So I think this is looking smooth, but what we can do is select these 2 keyframes and then move them forward to slightly slow down the motion. And what I also want to do is when you go to the camera cut, I want the focal length to be the same as it's here, but I want to change the focal length right on the camera cut. So what I can do is go to frame 52 before the camera cut, hover over the focal length, and I can either press on I to set a keyframe, or right click and set a keyframe for the value. And the cool thing about Blender is you can animate almost everything. You can animate the value, you can animate the characters, you can animate the color, and change the color in the middle of the animation, which is pretty cool. So go forward and maybe like move it even further. So we can do, for example, 80 focal length. So it zooms in even more, like so. So wide focal length, closer focal length, like this. But I don't like this because we don't see the sword fully. So what I want to do is maybe go back on frame 70. And then go back here on the start frame and then maybe make this even wider like so, like 65, for example. I think the sword is more visible right here. Now I'm going to rewatch the animation a few times. Now I think the camera motion should be subtle. This looks a bit weird. So what I want to do is go to frame 70, select it and delete the keyframe right here. Now what I want to do is take this frame on frame 75. And if I delete this, the animation might look a lot better. So sometimes when you're animating, you're going to find out that you need to delete some keyframes to get rid of the axis. So that's what I want to show you. Animating process is definitely not a linear process. It's still perfect. There's a lot of brainstorming going on and there's a lot of readjusting going on as you go on. So I'm going to select this, press on X, delete keyframes, and let's see what we get. And then I want the camera to slightly focus on the sword on the last frame. So I'm going to do Shift F and then rotate it to focus on the sword. And I'm going to try to keep the sword on this side of the rule of thirds so I get a good composition, something like this. So now what I'm going to do is just rewatch the animation, polish it again, polish the camera movements, and I'm going to come back. So feel free to do as you want with your animation too. Then I highly encourage you to sit down, polish, but there's got to be a point where you got to stop because you're not going to get a perfect result. So make sure to don't over polish and don't overthink it and just create whatever makes you happy for now. So I think I finished the animation. I think the last part could be stretched out even more whenever the character looks so the viewer can take in the sword and take in the happy character. So what we can do is actually I'm going to teach you this important trick. So when you're in a dope sheet, by default you should have this enabled, which is called show only selected, which is going to show you only what you have selected. So if I select the character's torso bone, it's going to show me only its torso bones. If I select everything, it's going to show me everything, but not everything inside the scene because I also animated the camera and sword, so I'm not going to be able to see the sword right here. So what we can do is I can actually expand the summary so I can explain this better. If I unhide this, if I uncheck this, you can see I'm going to see everything inside the scene. So what I wanted to do is move the last frame of the animation outward. So I'm going to take this, select this, or I can actually drag it and only select the summary, and it's going to select everything that is beneath this. So select the summary, select all the bones, and press on G, and let's move this on something like frame 130. So maybe I'll move this to frame 120. Now let's see what we get. So let's do Control End here to set the end frame on 120. And this is what we get. So this is the final animation we got after polishing. We got the smooth camera movement, camera cut, and then character takes out the sword. So now the animation part is done. Hard part is already finished. Congratulations. Now we can add some final touches like the depth of field and fixing the motion blur issue. And then we can render the viewport renders. And finally, we can render the final animation and then edit it and basically export everything together. So first, what we need to do is we want to blur out the background slightly. So let me show you how you can do that easily. If you select the camera and if you want to focus on your character, you can go to the camera properties, scroll down, and then we have depth of field. Now I can enable depth of field. So if I need to blur out the background, what I need to do is play around with the focus distance and then f-stop. So if I take the f-stop and drag this down, right now nothing happens because we don't see any depth of field options. But if I go to this drop-down menu, I can enable depth of field, and now I see the effect of the depth of field. Obviously, this is too much. So take the f-stop and adjust it the way you want. You can also take the distance and adjust it the way you want. But instead of adjusting the distance manually, what I recommend you to do is create an object and assign the distance to that object. So let me explain what I mean. First, let's set this back to default by pressing backspace. Now I want to do Shift right click to move the cursor in front of the character's face. Then press Shift A. Make sure before you create an object, you are outside the pose mode, because if you're in the pose mode, you're not going to be able to create new objects. So go outside the pose mode of the character, press on Shift A, empty, and then plane axis. Let's create a plane axis. This is something that it's not going to be visible in the final product. So if you press on empty and create like a cube, it's not going to be visible in the final animation. So don't worry about it. Right now, I'm going to press on empty, select this. Let's press on G to move this down. Make sure the origin point, this dot, is in front of the character. I can also go to the object properties and rename this. So I'm going to press on empty and let's rename this to something like focus. And by the way, while we're here, let's readjust the outliners. So I'm going to go to Studio, drag and drop the focus into Studio. Let's go to Assets as well. And we can see the diamond sword is imported properly inside the assets right here. So we don't need to reorganize everything. So I'm going to collapse these. And what I want to do is go back to the camera, select this, and then let's zoom in here slightly. Go back to the camera properties, scroll down, and then on the focus on object, on the depth of field properties, select this dropper menu, and then select the empty right here. Click on focus right here, and it's going to set it to focus. Or you can manually click here, type focus, and it's going to find the focus into your scene and assign it to the camera focus. Now, if I move this focus, for example, backwards, like all the way here, Shift S, selection to cursor, and I go to the camera, and then I move down the f-stop, you can see the camera is going to focus on this side, wherever the empty is, and not on the character. But if I want to focus on the character, again, Shift right click, Shift S, selection to cursor, and now it's going to blur out the background. But we need to play around and make it more natural. So let's turn this up to something like 1.5. But please keep in mind that when you enter the rendered view and when you enter the solid view, the depth of field is going to look a bit different. So let's actually check how the depth of field is going to look in the final render. I'm going to go to the rendered view for that. I think I might decrease this to something like 1.8 to blur this out even more. Now what we need to do is keyframe the values. So let me show you how to keyframe the values. First, we need to keyframe the depth of field as well, depending on the shot, and we need to keyframe the empty. What we want to do is first, to make our lives easier, we can actually select the depth of field and parent it with the camera. So I'm going to select the depth of field and then Shift left click select the camera. And if you remember, the parenting is done by Control P. So do Control P and then click on Object. And now if I move the camera, the empty is going to be parented with this as well. So now let's move to the last keyframe of the camera before the camera cut, which is the frame 52. And on frame 52, I need the empty to be in front of Steve's face. So I'm going to grab this and then move in front of Steve like so. So Steve is in focus. And then I'm going to go back and then I'm going to press on A, select all the keyframes of the empty, press on T, and then make this linear because we don't need to have any bezier or fancy motions on the empty. Now on the camera cut, make sure to press on I to set a keyframe on all values, then go forward by right arrow on one frame, and it jumps all the way back here, which is not what we want. So I'm going to press on Shift right click, Shift S, selection to cursor, and now the empty is going to be right here. Let's go to last frame on 120 and make sure the empty stays right in front of the camera, something like this. I think that looks pretty decent. So now we can see the background is blurred, but if you want to blur out the background even more on the camera cut, what you can do is go before the camera cut right here, then go down on the aperture, right click here, and then click on Insert Keyframe. Then go forward, and then on this shot, if you want a different value, you can either turn this down or turn this up. but I think the values should be almost the same. Let's do maybe 2.5 to slightly decrease the depth of field. I think this looks decent. And as you can see, we have a pretty cool glow on the sword from the compositing. And if you want to decrease it, you can actually go back to the compositing and play around with the glare settings. And the last thing we need to do is fix the motion blur issue. So if you render this animation normally, it's going to create issues. So when the camera jumps from 52 to 53, it creates like a big motion, a big gap. And then when you render the animation, it's going to give you like weird glitches with the motion blur. So what we need to do is actually go here and then set this to compositing for now. And we can change this later on. And by the way, a quick thing while the menu is here, you can go to options. You can enable this by pressing N. And then make sure to change the device from CPU to GPU so that your compositor uses the GPU as well. Then press on N to collapse this menu. Now what we need to do is go back to motion blur, vector blur. Now let's go right before the camera cut, which is frame 52. And then go back one frame, which is 51. So now we need to animate the shutter. So I'm going to hover over this and press on I, or you can simply press on right click and insert keyframe. It's going to do the same thing. Then go forward on one frame, take the shutter and then set this to 0. Then go forward one frame again and make sure it's 0. So right click and then click on insert keyframe. And after that, we're going to go to frame 54 and then click on shutter, do 0.5 again, or simply click this and then shift D and then move the 0.5 over here. So now we told the Blender that whenever there's a big jump on the camera, like a camera cut, I want the motion blur to be 0 so that there's no weird warping effect. And then right on the first frame of the camera cut, the motion is going to be 0.5 again. And if you had multiple camera cuts, what you would do basically is instead of going and then setting this to 0 and placing keyframes manually, what you could do is hover over these composite nodes, which is like the third one for now. You can actually box select these like so. And then you could shift D and then duplicate this on every camera cut. So basically, if you shift D and duplicate this, you can see what happens. If I go here, it's 0.5, then it's 0, 0, and 0.5 again. And if I copy this again, it's 0.5, 0, 0, and 0.5. So that's basically what you would do if you had like multiple camera cuts in the scene, but we only have one camera cut. We have a camera cut right here. So I need to set this to 0. So now I'm going to select this and go back to the 3D viewport. Again, if you don't like the glow, you can actually play around with the glare nodes. So you can increase the highlights and then turn up the threshold. For example, if you don't like the way the sword is glowing, you can turn up the threshold slightly. For example, you can turn this up to something like 1. You can also turn up the smoothness, maybe like 0.2. Now you can replay the animation and rewatch it. And if you like it, we're ready to start rendering. So I'm going to go here, go back to the 3D viewport. Let's rewatch the animation. And if there's any changes needed, I'm going to do them. For now, I'm happy with how this looks. So we need to render the animation. First, let's render the viewport to see how it looks in the video playback. So what we want to do is go to output settings and then scroll down. Make sure you have 1920 by 1080, 30 FPS. Again, you can go to higher resolutions here. Let's go down on the output. And what we need to do is keep the media type as image and PNG. Basically, keep everything as it is by default. And then let's turn off overwrite for now. And then we need to set up the output folder. So we're going to click on this. Let's click on MC Structured Folders. Go to Final Video. And I made this folder for you, which is called Image Sequence. Now what we need to do is name our file, name each image. And I'm going to name this tutorial underscore. So when the image sequences are created, it's going to create tutorial underscore 1, 2, 3, and so on. So I'm going to click on accept. And basically, I'm telling Blender to create individual images for each frame. So since we have 120 frames, Blender is going to now create 120 images, which we will be able to play back later when you drag and drop the image sequence into the video editor. And the last thing we need to do is we need to go up to View. If you don't see this, again, click on Scroll Wheel, move this on the right side. Click on View, scroll down, and then click on Render Play Blast. Once I do that, animation is going to start rendering, and I can zoom out and watch my animation render. And then once it stops, I'm going to come back. Now the animation is finished rendering. Now let me show you what happens when rendering is finished. So if you go to the final video of the MC Structured folders, go here, click on Final Video, and click on Image Sequence. Now you can see we have 120 individual images created. So I can open up the image and go on the right side using my right arrow and then play the animation like this. But obviously that's not the effective way to play the animation. Now, what we need to do is import this in the video editor, edit it, add some sound effects, and then render the animation. Now, the reason why I want to edit videos with the viewport renders is because it's a lot easier to playback. If you render the animation fully and then try to video edit it, it's going to become a lot laggier and it's just going to cause a lot of headache. So first, let's edit the video, add some sound effects, and then we can re-render the whole animation. So let's do that. First, save the scene. So click on Ctrl S, make sure you have the scene tutorial. And now we need to create a new video editing workspace. In this tutorial, I want to keep everything in Blender, so I'm going to teach you how to use Blender's video editor. So for that, let's go to File, click on New, and then click on Video Editing. Or alternatively, when you open a new Blender file, you can click on Video Editing, and that's going to do the same thing pretty much. So here you have the simple video editing workspace. This is where you're going to check the video playback. This is your timeline where you can import different media. This is all the properties which you can change. So what we need to do is make sure to go to Output Properties and make sure the frame rate is the same as our animation. The frame rate was 30 FPS. So I'm going to select this and then set this to 30 FPS. Also make sure the start and end frames are the same. So the start frame was 0 and the end frame was 124 hour animation. So I'm going to do 120 and that's going to rearrange my screen. Again, I can move it the same way. So I can middle mouse, move it on the right side, zoom in and out on the timeline, and I can just do the same thing. I can play back the timeline using spacebar or using these buttons. Now what I want to do is import our animation in the video editor. So the way we can do that is we can press on Shift A and then click on Image Sequence and then locate our image sequence. So because we are organized, we're going to go to the MC Structured folders, then go to Final Video, Image Sequence, and then select the first image, press on A to select all the images, and then click on Add Image Strip. And now it's going to import it. So you can actually move it on the right side, move it on the left side. What I'm going to do is move it on the right side on channel 4. So I'm on channel 4 right now. You can actually move to channel 1, 2, 3, but I want to leave channels 1, 2, and 3 empty for the audio tracks, for the sound effects. So I'm going to go up to channel 4 and then move this on frame 0 and left click to confirm. And now if I play the animation, you can see I have my animation imported inside the scene like this. Now to make the video more fun, I want to import some sound effects. And the best way to import sound effects in the Blender's video editor or any other video editor is to just simply drag and drop them. So if you open up your folder, go to MC Structured folder, click on Video Editing, you can see I provided you with some sound effects. So first I want to import some whooshes. So I want to whoosh here, and then I want to whoosh here. And then when the sword pops up, I want to add a popping sound effect here. And then when the character winks, I want to add a ding sound effect here. So you'll have everything provided here. So first, let's add, for example, one of the whooshes. Take the whoosh here and then drag and drop this in the video editor. First, it's going to be very loud. So what I want to do is adjust the volume. So go to the strip properties here and then turn down the volume to something like 0.2, for example. And also we want to align the motion with the whoosh. So for example, the first whoosh, I want it to be here when the character starts moving his hand. So I can actually grab the strip and then press on G and then move it like either on the right or left. Let's move it somewhere over here and then let's listen. Maybe like move it on left so it starts sooner. So the first whoosh is good. And then I want the second whoosh to be right here. Whoosh and then pop. So I'm going to go on my folder and then let's grab second whoosh, drag and drop it here. Press on G to move it on the side and then let's turn down the volume so that it's not loud. Let's see, first whoosh. I think this is good. And then when the sword pops, like right after the swoosh, I want to insert a popping sound effect. So I'm going to go here, grab this pop sound effect, and drag and drop this here simply. That's it. And then turn on the volume. Make sure you're in the strip properties and then turn on the volume. Let's press on G and then move this up somewhere over here. Maybe like move this outwards. Maybe like turn this down because it's annoying. And then I want the ding sound effect to be here whenever he winks, like here. So I'm going to take this, drag and drop the ding sound effect here, and I can match the audio waves, the white values with the timeline playhead. So I'm going to turn this down and press a G and then move this like somewhere over here. And let's see. Right. I think it's way too loud, so I'm going to turn this down. And let's play the animation. Let's see what we have. I think that's pretty much it. Now, I don't want this sound effect to drag on after my playhead, so I'm going to take this, move my mouse on the right side, click and hold, and let's minimize it like so that it ends together with the video. Now, we can also add the music, but we don't have to because it's a very short, quick animation. So if you want to add some music, you can go to YouTube Audio Library and search for a lot of high-quality royalty-free sound effects. If you have a budget, you can go to Epidemic Sound and then get a subscription and then save list your channel and use their sounds. And again, I have a quick tutorial and overview about how to get free music and sound effects, so you can check that video in the description. But for this tutorial, I want to keep things simple and I only want to add some whoosh and pop sound effects. Now I'm quickly going to readjust the volume, so I think 0.1 sounds good for all of them so that they are not too loud. So point one here, and then point one here as well. And let's play the animation and let's listen to it. And there we go. Before you render the animation from the video editor, what we want to do is click on Ctrl S and then save this file as a video editing file. So click on Ctrl S, make sure you're in the MC structure folder, project files, and let's name this something like tutorial video editing, and then save the file. Now again, let's go back to our scene. What we want to do is basically render the animation because this is not a fully rendered animation. So click on File, click on Open Recent. But now we're going to be able to open the tutorial blend file directly from here. So click on tutorial.blend, click on Save, and now we're back to our scene. Now what we need to do is instead of the viewport render, we're going to render the animation and overwrite the rest. So what I mean by that is if you go back here, go to the final video and image sequence, we want to overwrite everything with the fully rendered images. So what we can do is go down here in the output and make sure we turn on overwrite. So if you render the final animation, it's going to be overwritten and then all the viewport renders are going to be replaced with the fully rendered animation. Before you render the animation, make sure you're happy with everything and how it looks. Make sure everything is enabled. So make sure you have the vegetation enabled from here. Assets are enabled, characters are visible. And also before you hit render and render animation, make sure you double check everything. Make sure you're happy with the samples, denoising is checked. You can either choose optics or open image denoising, depending on your GPU. Scroll down, make sure you're happy with all the settings. And one more thing I want to show you is when you go to the render, you can scroll down and then go to the performance and then make sure the tile size is high if you have a GPU. If you're rendering with a CPU, make sure the tile size is low. I'm going to keep this at 2048. And if you have RAM like 16 gigabytes and above, you can check persistent data so Blender doesn't have to recalculate all the settings from start. So I'm going to check this persistent data so that I actually render faster. Ctrl S to save the scene, and then once you're ready, you can click on render right here and render animation, or the shortcut is Ctrl F12. So I'm going to click on Ctrl F12 and it's going to render the animation. But keep in mind that depending on your hardware, it might take a few minutes, a few hours, or for some people, if you have a longer animation, it might take a few days. So you can render the animation across a few days. So you can render for 8 hours, turn off your PC, and then go to the next day, render for 8 hours, and so on. And I'm going to come back to you once the animation rendering is finished. So Ctrl F12. All right, we are back and it finished rendering. Now if I check my scene, you can see I have rendered images. And if I go forward, you can see I have some motion blur on the character's arm, which is exactly what we want. Now we can go back to the video editing. So again, as always, Ctrl S to save your scene. Then click on File, Open Recent, and let's open the tutorial video editing Blender file. Now if you play the animation, you can see it's playing the rendered animation like so. So there we go, the animation is finished. Now the last thing we need to do is go to Output right here. Scroll down and let's output the file into the video. We don't need to do any image sequences anymore because we want to export this as video. Make sure the type is video and make sure the encoding is set to MPEG-4. You can leave it at H.264. You can leave this either at medium or high quality. If you go higher, the file size is going to go crazy. So I'm going to go for high quality for now. Keep everything as it is and keep the audio as it is. So you can leave most of these settings by default. Now select the output folder. So I recommend outputting this inside the MC structured folder. So I'm going to click here. Let's click on MC structured folders. Click on it again. Let's go to final video and let's name this whatever you want. Tutorial, Minecraft, animation, accept. And now the last thing we need to do is click on render, render animation. And now it's going to render the video very fast because every frame is rendered. We don't need to recalculate any frames. We just have to recalculate the video and sound effects, and that's pretty much it. So once it's rendered, we can go back and watch our animation. So click on final video and let's play the animation. And well done, congratulations, you just finished your very first Minecraft animation inside Blender 5.0. And as a quick bonus, I want to show you how to download the free animation library so you can try it out and test it out yourself. So if you go to my Patreon, you can scroll down and then go to the popular posts and you can click on this 8 animations free animation library. Once you go here, you can scroll down and then click on this download button right here. You can go to MC structured folder and then save this inside the animation library right here. Once it's downloaded, you can right click and unzip this. Click on extract, extract all. Then you can go inside this and then open up the Blender file to see how it's made. So you can actually open this up. And now we have the free animation library. So you can actually have walk cycle. I can drag and drop and then use a sword swing if you want, like this. We also have a cheer, fall on back, waving, run cycle, backflip. So feel free to drag and drop and play around with these animations. So these animations can be looped, repeated, mixed with each other using the NLA editor. And if you want to know how it's done, if you want to know how to save time, then I have a full tutorial linked in the description which shows you how to use the animation library, how to set it up as an asset frozen, and all that fancy stuff. So if you're interested, then be sure to check out the video you see on the screen right now and click the link in the description. So to summarize this guide, we learned the basics of Blender and navigation. We learned how to set up our assets and folders, imported our Minecraft world and character inside Blender. We added lighting and did some compositing with effects like motion blur and glare. Then we learned animation, rendering, and we finally learned the basic video editing as well. Now, after watching this video and following along, you will be ready to start creating your own Minecraft animations. This is a great start, and my advice for you moving forward would be to first practice, make a lot of animations and experiment. You don't have to write a story for every animation. You can just take a character, think of some movement you want to do, and animate it. In that process, you will come across some problems, come up with solutions, and that's a great way to learn. Secondly, consume a lot of art, which can be anything: film, animation, drawing, music, etc. By consuming art, you get a lot of cool ideas and inspiration. And 3, watching tutorials is great, but you should try to replicate the stuff you learn by yourself. Watch tutorials when you need to learn something new or remind yourself of some things, but try to do projects mostly by yourself and use tutorials only when you need them. Also, please keep in mind that making mistakes and getting stuck is natural, and it's a part of the learning process. So don't worry and keep going. And if you get stuck on anything, then feel free to leave a comment down below. So that's it for this tutorial. If you want to see more content like this, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to support the channel, get cool rewards, get help with your projects, and level up your skills, then be sure to check out my Patreon as well as my Udemy course linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.